Good evening, good folks. We are here for our Monday, June 13th, 2022 work session of the City Commission of the City of Muskegon. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Ramsey,
Here.
Vice Mayor German,
Here.
Commissioner Gorman,
Here.
Commissioner Emery,
Here.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Here.
Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Hood, absent.
Thank you. All right, first up on the agenda, we've got a 2022 long-term goals presentation being led out by our manager, Mike Sell.
Thank you. Now that my computer turned off on me. Alrighty, so Anne, were you gonna bring up the document, or do you want me to try to? Oh, look at that! You're all Johnny on the spot. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so we probably don't need to go through every word in here, but just wanted to remind everybody that the process that we went through, we did go through this process of a vision tour. So we talked about, what was Muskegon, what would we see if we were visiting Muskegon in 2027? And these are the items that were captured from that conversation, all the breakout groups and the flip charts and the follow-up conversation afterward. Rather than read every one of those to you. Those are the items that went into the conversation about what should our goals be. Excuse me, my voice isn't really good today. So the first goal is destination, community, and quality of life. And we came up with some key focus areas related to that goal. And then the leadership staff met and discussed all of this and came up with some action items that made sense, of course, based on the conversation that we all had together. So the action items we have for this goal include making sure that we're starting the conversation with Amtrak. Staff thought that we should also talk about Greyhound because we don't have bus service any longer. We'll start investigating the water taxi idea and see what vendors there might be available to us. We will revise our Parks and Recreation plan and make sure that it's robust with emphasis on capital projects. Go ahead.
Would you welcome interjections
Oh, yeah,
during
sure,
the presentation?
sure,
Or would
yep.
you prefer any questions or additional comments be referred to the end?
Conversation is good because I think, that what you have to say might spur some idea in somebody else. So,
All right. Actually,
Shoot.
yeah, just when I heard of water taxis, that's
Yeah.
in terms of improving the connectivity to downtown and along our waterfront. Another mode of transportation that we've talked about in the past and is like kind of a strolling circulator, having a shuttle van, so to speak, or something like that. Trolley, could be a trolley. Connecting our Jackson Hill neighborhoods through our downtown into Lakeside, into Pure Marquette, and just improving that interconnectivity of all of our waterfront neighborhoods. And then also, beyond the nice part of enhancing accessibility to our waterfront for our neighbors and residents is that the more residents we get to use that service to Pure Marquette, the more parking spots are made available for non-residents also. So could it generate more revenues for our park system?
okay. So instead of just focusing on the water taxis, we'll expand that to transportation options to get people to the waterfront. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed, yeah.
All right. Anything else related to that?
Yeah, and could we, because I know there's a private developer interested in doing their own water taxi, and I know that there was an effort last year to do a somewhat of a shoreline circulator, not necessarily full-fledged that I have in my mind, but perhaps we could get some insights from how that went last year, where it was basically just going from downtown to Pure Marquette and back, and that was coordinated by the Chamber in concert with Ramos Towing. And perhaps we can get some insights from them as to how that experiment went and maybe what we can learn from it and work to improve on. And yeah, I think that will probably be part of that kind of transit may end up being part of a larger conversation around the transit authority and where we move forward with that. So that's not necessarily something that we have to spearhead, but
Right.
something that let's just be mindful of.
Mr. Alexander had his hand up, I think, over there. Dave? Yeah, I think he wanted to say something.
I'm sorry to report that bus transit from downtown was not successful. In terms of numbers and what we supported it with, DDA and the bid put some money towards it, and we can go back and ask them.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do it. The numbers just weren't there.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we have to gain insights from as to what the experience was last year with that, what worked, what didn't work, how we could improve upon it so that we can get that ridership that would be necessary to sustain it. And another opportunity is potential, sponsorships to defray the costs from, public outlays of resources. Yeah.
Tried that,
So,
and then both
yeah.
downtown and the beach area and Lakeside was not real responsive.
Yeah. Well, Lakeside was left out initially. We don't need to go through all this
I was
right now,
gonna say,
but I do
let's
want
not
to
solve
get those
it.
insights. So, Commissioner Ramsey.
Yep, I just want to elaborate or hammer home something that was sort of touched on just now, and I'm not sure which one of you said it. Oh, that looks good. One of our ongoing themes for that day was really about collaboration and support, and not to reinvent or to own as a city. And I think that it's really important for us to share that with our neighbors, that moving forward, that we want to be a part of the efforts, the wonderful efforts that are already happening here. It is not our job as a city to own, but to collaborate and support so that our stakeholders, partners, can do what they do best.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey.
Gotcha. Okay. We also talked about continuing forward with our events and activities, increasing grant assistance to neighborhoods to reduce blight, and allocating funds for tram and public restrooms. All right, so moving on to goal 2. That one's focused on economic development, housing, and business. The action items that we came up with for this goal, including neighborhood commercial center development in our master plan update, pursuing funding for a food hall at the farmers market, increasing the variety of housing types, developing subsidies to improve housing affordability, beginning engagement and discussion about chalets at Pere Marquette Park near NOAA. We also talked among staff about maybe not limiting that to only be at NOAA. So I would like some commissioner input on that, because the Imagine Muskegon Lake plan had also considered those along Indiana or, right around there inside the oval. So, everybody open to that suggestion too for the chalets at Pere Marquette? Like around Indiana Avenue inside the oval?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
reflected in our Imagine Muskegon Lake plan.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that whatever is in that plan is what our neighbors have been saying to follow. And so anytime we can go back to that plan, it's a great opportunity for us. Yes.
Thanks.
Indeed.
Okay. And then the last action item for that goal is to complete the Adelaide Point public improvements. Other comments, questions? All right, goal 3 is community connection. Our action items are monthly communication with the neighborhood associations, increasing education outreach to voters, updating and implementing internal communication policies, developing a community newsletter, creating media content to assist with community engagement, and modernizing our recruitment strategy. Thoughts, comments, questions? It sounds like we're all in alignment with what was discussed, so that's good. Come on, computer. So the last goal is financial infrastructure. The action items that we have discussed and identify specific major capital projects from across all departments. I would like to note that I have been talking with some of our department and division heads about developing a longer-term capital plan that would be across the city. So I think people are on board with doing that. Also, to take advantage of external revenue sources, we want to make sure that we complete our water and sewer rate study and improve the budget process to maintain focus throughout the year so that it, obviously there's a lot of focus on the budget today. And the finance department has done a load of work to get us ready for this. And we do have our quarterly reforecasts, but having something even more in-depth so that we're paying attention to the budget constantly. Questions? Thoughts? Other ideas?
So I see some aspects of equity, reflected in here, particularly with regard to diversity and inclusivity with our business development and economic development. How are we anticipating as we move forward as a city, because it's something that is very mindful or important, should I say, to the commission as I understand it. I'm not speaking for the entirety of the commission, though. That DI work is incredibly important to our city and our community. And I'm just wondering if the anticipation is that this is going to be baked into everything we do, and doesn't necessarily need to be called out specifically in there. It's good to have concrete stuff, but also just be mindful of being baked into pretty much everything we do. And in that same vein, I don't see much discussion with regard around environmental sustainability or mitigating the risk of climate change. We do with regard to infrastructure resiliency or sustainability in that regard. I see that. So I guess I'm just wondering in that regard, is the expectation that we're going to be baking that into everything that we do, of trying to being mindful as we move forward in our practices and our programming and our capital investments of being energy efficient and environmentally conscious as we move forward. How do you envision that being reflected in this goal setting document, or do we need to have that added or reflected?
Well, it's really up to the commission. It is pointed out as a focus area. If there's a specific action item you would like us to pursue in this first year of this long-term vision, it's perfectly fine to add something.
The
or-
environment equity, you see, is it a focus area?
Well, since this is the one that's in front of me, the environment, the sustainability and financial practices and infrastructure is what was on my mind when I said that.
Okay. So we are including, yes, that's the one nod that I saw potentially to it, more so that climate change resiliency and responding to the changes. I guess I'd like to expand beyond that and have that extended throughout our city's operations as we proceed, of being more working on the progress we've made in preceding years to become a more environmentally friendly and sustainable city, and also save us money in the same time. And that's what I think of when I see financial and infrastructure sustainability is more of that, those dollars and cents aspect of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to be clear on direction. Do you want us to develop an actual action item related to this, or?
I think that, so we were originally going to have the White House city manager join us, Montague city manager join us tonight to do a presentation on the climate emergency declaration that city had done and the corresponding action steps they've taken related to their action plan. And then I just asked them to delay that for the time being. We had enough items on this agenda. And so he'll be coming back maybe in the fall. But that could be, reviewing the presentation and what steps they've done in Montague, how they've followed through on their climate emergency declaration and the corresponding action plans. And so that's something that we can still flesh out, but maybe just have a nod to that work that needs to get underway.
Yeah, I think it might make sense to have an action item of, investigating options and bringing back a proposal to the commission.
Because I see that resolution and corresponding action plan is where we really get into that more nitty gritty of like, okay, do we want to really put solar everywhere or wind turbines everywhere on our buildings, or do we want to upgrade our city fleet to electric vehicles, or what other steps we can take? But that's not something that I think needs to be all fully reflected in this, but in that action plan that corresponds with the climate emergency declaration that we'll be considering later this year. Does that help you? Okay. Commissioner Rancy.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point, that it's not something we need to necessarily take on now, but as we begin to look at all these things, including the sustainability that the mayor was just speaking to, and our work toward addressing climate change as a community, especially here on the Lakeshore, is super important. The DEI work that we're talking about, I think that those are the lenses that we look at everything through. And as we bring ourselves to a spot where they become more active, and more like a sieve and less like a lens, then I think that we continue to consider those. But what I would like to see for direction is I would like to turn this into an action plan. So I would like to know who these action items have been assigned to, what office, who follows up, where these go. We in the city of Muskegon do a really great job of identifying opportunity that we need to do in our community, gaps that need to be addressed, and we all have the fire and passion to do it. And then tomorrow at 8 a.m. we all go back to our other jobs, whether that's at a community-based organization or here at the city, and life takes over. And so while it's our jobs as commissioners to hold people in this building accountable, it's also your jobs to hold us accountable. So how can we turn this into an action plan with systems of accountability built in so that we know what steps are happening as they happen? Rome was not built in a day. All of these things are great. I'm not trying to give anyone extra work unless it's Jake and or Mike Franzik, because they are not here. But other than that, I think that it would be a great opportunity for us to begin to hold each other accountable and have conversations around these things so that there is an instance of fruition of the vision, And I also am super concerned for the third thing, my apologies. Not really. I'm also super concerned because this seems to be a ton of work, and I don't know how our already strapped staff is going to be able to carry this out and who it lives with, to even have the oversight of monitoring our systems of accountability, right? Because even that takes time. So chew on that. And how do we, you know what I mean? Because we obviously want these things to happen, and overwhelming staff isn't going to make it happen any better or faster.
Right.
But there does need to be a system of accountability so that we don't just, and the mayor and I have had this conversation many times, what happened in 2019 with the goals we set out there? What happened in 2020? I'm so smart. With the goals that we set out there, right? And even if we don't achieve them, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. How far did we get? Where do we need to pick up and continue next year? Right. And so that when this bench goes through another metamorphosis like we've just seen, the team after us gets to say, oh, this is where we were.
Right.
We're still down for this. Let's carry it forward.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Right before this meeting, and I apologize for the lateness in it, I did send you a review of the goals that we set a little over a year ago. So you can see the progress that we've made. I don't recall if when Lou Bender sent out his summary report, if that went to all the commissioners or not. Or if that's, did I have language in here? Anyway.
Did anyone else see it?
I feel like.
Oh, good. Me neither. I didn't see it.
I feel like maybe that's in the early language here. Sorry for the scrolling. So anyway, the report from Lou, and I feel like he discussed this with us at the goal setting session, was, you're going to put this plan together and then you need to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And so he suggested certain intervals that staff would interact with the commissioners, and provide updates and just be sure, okay, here's where we are going forward. Is this still the right direction? And there's regular regular communication on it. So certainly my intention to follow that direction.
Wonderful.
That could be at a future goal setting or future work session or, whatever we determine.
And again, Manager Makesell, I'm not interested in overwhelming you or your staff.
I know.
I just know that we need to all be held accountable to this because
Correct.
everyone has done so much work in the past in this beautiful city, and where is that? Where do we point to that? How do we claim that? How do we take pride in some of that stuff, right? That we
Right.
have done.
Right. Yep, I
100
understand.
pennies is still $1. Let's take the wins where we can. And so whatever that looks like, and maybe it identifies that, there needs to be an increase in team and in funds or some re-looking at job descriptions and scopes of work, whatever that looks like. We know that this work is important. So however we can help to do that, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And great points, Commissioner Ramsey, on that continuous follow through and reviewing and monitoring our progress and keeping on top of that. And then being mindful of what capacity we have at City Hall to implement, and then filling those gaps where necessary and where our fiscal situation allows at the same time. Manager Mikesell in her memo cover sheet for this mentioned that the leadership team will discuss the plan at regular intervals and confirm that the plan is guiding decision making. After a 6 to 7 month time frame, staff will discuss the vision at a work session to determine if changes are needed. A year after adoption, the group will reconvene to consider progress made and develop action items for the next year. Future decisions should be reviewed in light of this vision and strategic plan. So this 5-year goal setting will be a living, breathing document that we'll continue to be mindful of and adjust as necessary as we go forward. We made tremendous progress in our last 5-year goal setting round that wrapped up last year, and hopefully we will make just as much, if not greater, progress on this next 5-year round of goals. Commissioners, any other questions or input? Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. To Deputy Manager Mikesell, on item, I'm going to go to when we talk about economic development, housing, and businesses. There's definitely a essential need for more minority businesses in the community. As Mayor Johnson and Commissioner Ramsey stressed the need to push the DEI initiative that we have a shortage of. We don't see many businesses downtown that reflect the community. And actually, I don't know of many, if not any, down there. I know there was an opportunity to have a minority business in the arena down there at one time, which was voted down on the other administration. But I think we really need to take a hard look on how we can address this matter. It doesn't look good for the city. You have a city that's paying taxes from all ethnic groups, and the city is not being reflective when it comes to the economics and development and businesses in our downtown area. And I think that says a lot to the fact that economically wise or development wise, we're not as inclusive as we would like to look at this mission or this vision. Because I think facts and the something that's tangible where you can look at it and say, hey, okay, we have this type of business downtown or this type of restaurant that's it could be an Italian restaurant, it could be a black restaurant, it could be Hispanic, and then funding. You have, when we talk about equity, it's good to have a level playing field, but if you don't have access to capital, how can we better assist in those needs as well? So what part is the city doing when it's we have proposals from outside sources of businesses or individuals that want to open up a business, how we're accommodating them and with these grants, and also barriers that may come across where we can assist to alleviate some of those barriers because of economic gap and income gap barrier.
Right. Well, you'll see in the document that I sent shortly before the meeting, we had some action items related to these topics from last year, and so you'll see my report on that. We had our small retailer assistance grants that we helped more local and minority owners. We do have, I also reported on the minority-owned businesses that were accessed through the chalets and through Kitchen 242. Excuse me. We have shared with the commission in the past. It's been a little bit about the Motu Winery and the speakeasy that's going in at the far west end of Western Avenue. Well, at least until Shoreline Drive. So, and our economic development staff are certainly working to find locations for various minority-owned and women-owned businesses. I know that they've been working with the owner of La Soulfield Eatery, trying to find a location for her. So, we are doing that. If there is a desire from the commission to have an action item included, maybe similar to what we had a year ago, we can add something in.
I think that would be great. And, how are we assisting them, though, when it comes to those type of situations and barriers where they may not have the capital to, open up, or they may need a certain amount of revenue that exceeds what they can afford? Are we working closely with these banks also to hold them accountable when it comes to fair practice and lending? Just to name a couple of things.
Right. Well, I guess I'm not sure what work we've done with the banks, other than the work that Onita has been doing through CNS, but that's more related to housing. We have tools. We've used the Small Retailer Assistance Grant Program. We have our Economic Development Fund. We offer loans through that. We certainly guide people to other programs that aren't administered by us, through the state, the Small Business Administration, MEDC, all of those things. So, we make sure that they're aware of all the tools that are out there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, there seems to be an opportunity here, but it's going to be more work for someone, unfortunately. So as the mayor just tried to so eloquently say to me, Commissioner Ramsey, if you would read the packet, the information that you're requesting is in there.
That was not my intent. I was defining what
And previously
the
I had
manager was
tried
looking
to
for.
articulate in the nicest way possible that I'm not satisfied with that and really need a system of accountability. We'll get together in 5 or 7 months.
Right.
Is there a way to speak to what Vice Mayor German just said, for us to create a forgive me, y'all, logic models or Gantt charts or anything that walks us back from what we have now to the report that you just gave on a timeline that has real measurable outcomes, so that we can say when Vice Mayor German says, hey, Manager Mike Sal, how many bikes did we add to the downtown bike park? Or, has transportation increased? Well, we can't say that transportation has increased, but as a city, we added 12 new bikes to our rental areas. So that's obviously not a thing. I'm just pulling something out, right? Mm. But is there a way for us to be able to walk back into our last goal-setting outcomes so that we can see how they transfer into these? We pick up and move forward, and then maybe that would mitigate some of these conversations here so that we could read, and so could our neighbors, about the stuff that has been going on, right? We make that connection. We understand that our work is not for naught, and that we are moving forward together.
Indeed. And Commissioner Ramsey, please know that was not a clap back.
I am giving you a hard time. It is a Monday night work session, and if we can't laugh, we're all going to go home sad.
I was simply reading the cover sheet because that's what Manager Mike was trying to find.
Yes.
What was written in there, so I read it for her. Okay. But no, absolutely, we need to be monitoring that progress,
yeah,
and having measurable
I just think that if we could tease out
Action items.
some of those measurements and outcomes from the wonderful report that that Manager Mike Sell just sent over, that might be a little bit easier than to transpose those into what we're doing now moving forward.
Yeah. The other thing that I've had conversations with Manager Mike Sell, as well as some other leaders at City Hall, is identifying as we move forward with the budget or with other items that are being brought to the City Commission. It's like, here, please consider this and approve this. Like, how does this tie back to this
Yeah.
goal-setting document?
All the time.
Like,
You know, that's funny. I
how
wrote
does this
that
connect to
down.
this? How does this connect to that? How does this connect to that? Like, and so it is being top of mind throughout the year, and guiding our actions throughout the year, not something that we just revisit on a periodic basis, whether that's 1 year or 6 months. But yes, with us.
I love
throughout.
that, and you know, Mayor, firsthand, that I'm not a numbers person. That I rely heavily on my colleagues here to look at those things and to do those things, especially you and Commissioner Emery. Those things jump out off of the page at you guys, where to me it's all hieroglyphics. But I think that any time that we can say that we're going to take the work that we do and be able to pin it directly back to our mission, vision, and effort as a community, it's always going to pay off in the end, right? So then it will always be a part of our budget because the work is there to be done. And it will help to keep all of the things that we all like to closely monitor as our own sort of passion for our community in line.
You know, it's funny that you raised that because I had written down agenda items. How does it relate to goals? You know, maybe that just needs to be part of the cover sheet. You know, and maybe not everyone will be apparent how it relates to an action item, but some will.
Yeah.
It would be nice to point that out.
I think it'd be helpful, for sure. Commissioners, do you have any other input or questions with regard to our long-term goal?
Great job.
All right.
Thank you.
Great job.
I'll make a couple of updates and send it out.
Great job to everyone who was there that day. I know that some of us on this bench were a little like, ugh, because it was a Friday and like so much was going on. But when we got in that room, all of that went away. We had a great time with all of you. I hope that you guys were all able to enjoy me. And that we get to do it again soon.
Yeah.
I would encourage this sort of activity probably twice a year for follow-up and just check-in, right? And for growth measurement and then for opportunity for mid-course correction. It was a great time. You guys did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a great day. And yeah, you certainly provided some comedic relief as well, Commissioner Ramsey. And it still carries forward. We still
Yes.
occasionally make jokes about the hieroglyphics that you wrote your
Oh,
chicken
now that
scratch
is very true. Also, neighbors.
on the easels.
Oh, that was terrible. But neighbors, for those of you who weren't able to be there, that is an open meeting. And you are welcome to come and be in that room with us and be a part of these conversations. We publicize that. We do it every year. This is my second or third one. But again, if it's something that you can come and spend some time at, even if it's not all day, I always invite people to come out and see it because it is really a unique process for us.
Indeed. Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. And now we have Director Kenneth Grant for our fiscal year 2022 to 2023 budget, proposed budget.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank everyone who has helped me with this presentation, my staff, the department heads, the commissioners, everyone who's helped me, because this is a very arduous process and we've spent a lot of time on it. So I just wanted to start off. Is this my spreadsheet?
No, that's me. Can you give that control to Ken? You should have.
Oh, there it is. Oh. So we've sent out the budget in probably like a lot of spreadsheets, but I find it easier to look at it this way because you can kind of look at it line by item, line by line, instead of a whole bunch of little lines and squiggly. So this is what we're proposing to you as a general fund. As you look at it, we kind of break it down by department, by expenditures. If you notice on the 101 30203, it's a big $3.4 million that we're using to pay our defined benefits. I am working with MERS right now to hopefully we could get that number down, lowered into about 400,000 a year. We're gonna smooth it out over a couple years, so the city won't have to pay up to $5 or $6 million in the next couple years. So I'm working with MERS right now to get that number down. It's more of a smoothing thing. We're not getting away with the money, but we're just smoothing it out so it won't hurt our budget so bad in the next 4 or 5 years, because it was going to hit the peak in 2 more years, and it would just been higher. It'd been close to $6 million.
This is not the peak.
No, it's not the peak. We're almost at the peak, and by 2032, if you're still here, as a commissioners, you probably have $5 or $6 million to play with in the budget that we don't have now. So this is something that we're gonna, we're about to reach our peak in the next couple of years. So they reached out to me, and I accepted that offer, and hopefully you guys, I'll bring that back to you once the offer comes back. But I did include this number into the budget, but this number could potentially go down this year.
On that note, with the smoothing, would that push out? Because previously we had heard that it's going to be ramping up and peaking, but by the end of this decade, we're going to have freed up likely $5 to $6 million that we can redeploy to invest in our community, and provide that services. With the smoothing, will that push that out? Would that?
It will push. Yes, it will push it out, but it will be a gradual push out. So we're still gonna. Our fund, I think we're going to be fully funded by 2038 or something like that. So it's still not going to stop that. It's just going to gradually push out, so we won't have to pay $6 million next year and the next year. So we're maybe, so I think that's the best way to go right now.
Okay.
There's-
So free
with-
up resources near term.
Yeah, even with the smoothing, there's a pretty big drop still. It just doesn't happen quite as quickly.
Gradual smoothing, it goes down like this instead of going up like this and drop. It kind of goes down gradually, then it drops off.
Okay. Gotcha.
But it saves the city $400,000 or $500,000 a year for the next couple of years. But you do have to go out a couple more years to get that. So we're not getting away from paying for it, but we're
Right.
And hopefully the state will give us some funding to help close our gap too. That's in the works at the state level. Pete might. I do, but that is at the state level that we might get some help to get our pension funded.
Yeah, that'd be very, very welcomed.
Yeah.
And
That would
appreciate
help us even more. So if we get that, it would drop us down even faster.
Absolutely. Okay. Appreciate your
that's-
efforts on that smoothing.
So that's one of the things I'm working on. I sent that check off to them because we have to pay them a actuary fee to look at it again. So that's one of the things that I'm going to. As you can see, the police is the number one user of the general fund. They're over $10 million. Fire is close behind with 3.3. Also, we have in the budget in the capital that we're gonna probably fund get a fire truck, but we'll probably finance it over five years. So that's a like $700,000 truck that you approved last year. It's still not ready. So once it's ready, we're gonna finance that and finance it over 5 years. Park maintenance, I know that's park maintenance is I blame Leo for this, but the cost of park maintenance is mostly labor. The people that we used to get for $10, $11 an hour, they're costing us $15, $16, $17 an hour to get the same level that we have. So that the parking budget has exploded in the last year and a half. But we're working very hard to get those parks maintained and things like that. So in this budget, I also pointed out that I made a new department called Parking Maintenance, so we could truly track how much it costs to enforce the parking that we're getting. So I know in the past we got $700,000 in parking, but I really want to show you that it costs $200,000 or $300,000 to keep our parking enforcement officers out there getting the money to run that park. So $700,000 is not free and clear. We have expenses that go with that.
They don't come out of the $10 million that the police officers are already getting?
No, we had them lumped together and we broke them out.
Just ask.
Yep. So the police does do their part, but we do have 4 officers, parking officers that do the whole city.
Now, are you going to, and I appreciate the greater detail in breaking it out and having us understand what the true net benefit or proceeds to the city are. Are you going to include the fees for non-compliance with the parking pass? Because you mentioned that we're paying our parking officers from the passes that people buy, but then we're also collecting
Yes.
hundreds of thousands of dollars and fines for people that are not.
We do have a
using the
budget.
parking
We have a
passes.
line. We have a revenue line item. It does not really tell you if it's parking tickets, but you can clearly see for the last 2 years that the revenue has spiked in that area, and it's probably due to the enforcement at the parking at the beach. So we do track that. It's not broke. I could break it down because if they pay online, I can see if they pay online if it's for a parking ticket and things like that. But we do it.
Okay.
I would love to see it broken out like that. I'm one of the biggest people that had to eat crow around this parking stuff, and I say that every day. But I think that I would like to really know exactly where we're benefiting so that we have a better idea of where we should use those funds when opportunities come up. I would like to know that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can show you that. I can show you the spike and how it's going up in the last couple of years, and
And I guess trend over 3 years or whatever, then, Michael, stop asking, right? Just assume that it's 25% increase every year. That's what we take it as.
Yes,
But I would like to see something like that.
I can send you
And I
something
will
tomorrow
look
for
at
the. I can send you something for the
Someone
last
can
2
explain.
years.
Perfect.
Okay, I will do that.
That detail is welcomed, and I've had conversations with Director Grant as well about having a dedicated Parks and Rec fund and how that could serve us. But short of that, because that's maybe a step too far at this time, having just a Parks and Rec budget that is going into more granular detail that's still housed in our general fund. So it simplifies finance life, or it doesn't complicate it, should I say, overly complicate it. But still, we can have greater transparency or clarity into our Parks and Rec. Currently Parks. We'll get to the Parks and Rec side, but currently Parks maintenance of at least showing all of the revenue sources going in, and then how it's being spent, so that we can clearly see those parking revenues going into it. We can clearly see the sponsorships for the convention center that we used ARPA dollars to bond, and with the expectation that sponsorship revenue is going to be dedicated to our parks, and so we can clearly see that money is going into our parks, and having that clarity for us and the community. So I wholeheartedly agree with you there, Commissioner Rand. That was a long roundabout way of saying I agree.
I mean, but it's the only way that we know how to get there, you and I.
So on a related thing, we did receive our second half of the ARPA money last week. So I put that aside. So I just want you to know that we did get that. I was worried because I submitted it like early May, and it took forever to get the money. I was like, did I do it wrong? And then so we got the $11 million in, and I did put it in a separate fund. So, and I might try to invest it, some conservative investment, to get some interest on it, and then how fast we spend it. But we are spending. So that's unrelated. Here, I'm gonna go to general funds revenue. Our revenue is composed of major categories. Is taxes. The income tax and property taxes are our biggest ones. You can see that makes 17, almost $18 million of our budget. Between those two departments across the hall, they collect a lot of money, and they're very busy in different times. Our property taxes are steadily going up. Our taxable values are going up faster than we're collecting because we give a lot of tax breaks. We get NEZs, we give IFTs, we give a lot of tax breaks. So our taxable values that comes from the county looks better than what we actually collect because we give a lot of breaks away, and it takes 15 to 30 years to see the full benefits. I was talking to the city manager today that I think we have a couple businesses or infrastructure buildings that are going to be out of the Renaissance zone, and so we're going to capture 100% on that in the next year or two. So that should help our revenues in the property taxes. Income tax, I don't know what it is, but income tax is collecting at a record high for the second year in a row, and I think next year it's going to be even better because last year we didn't do as much compliance as we wanted to. So I think income tax and the penalties that we generate for income tax is going to be even better next year. The small claims court has been really closed, so we really haven't been going after people that way. So I think we're gonna, next year is gonna be getting better than this year. But I'm being conservative,
Yeah.
and hopefully, if I see a ratchet up, I would come to you in the second or third, fourth quarter forecast and let you know that that number is going up. So income tax is looking good for this year also. I think it's going to exceed last year, which was a record year already.
Excellent.
So, and that's not mostly, it's mostly to individual collections. I think wages and things are going up, and you see that reflected in our revenue source.
Yeah. I think it is also, you mentioned the property taxes, and that we're not necessarily seeing the tax capture keeping up with the taxable value because of the abatements and incentives that have been provided over, decades. That what we're seeing reflected in the income tax side, because we're creating new jobs or bringing new
see that
residents
faster.
into
You
our
see that a lot
city.
faster.
And so that growth is being reflected in our income tax sooner. And it's exciting to know that some of the property or the tax incentives that have been afforded over the years are going to be dropping off. Renaissance
You'll be
Zone
amazed,
and
like our hospitals and how much the doctors make and how much they pay, and 0.5%. 0.5% of 200,000 is more than somebody who's making 80,000 at 1%. So it's just you see that our non-residents are really contributing to our city because they come in, use our infrastructure, destroy our roads, and then if they have to call up the police officers, they're not going to call their home police officer if something happens in Muskegon. So we respond if they have emergencies and things like that. So they're using our services when they're here, so they're paying a percentage of that too.
yeah, it's only reasonable they pay their fair share.
So with that, let me see. This resolution kind of goes over all our street funds. That goes over our local funds.
Commissioner Ramsey, did you want to interject before we?
Yeah,
Any
have
questions? Any questions?
Sorry, Director Grant. Commissioner Ramsey.
You're fine. I have a question for Director Grant. Can you scroll back a little bit, Ken?
Yes.
Just for some examples for our neighbors, 2 categories in the general fund are fines and fees and then other revenue. Can you give me an example of what we might be familiar with that would slide into those numbers?
Like fines and fees, one of the biggest one is income tax penalties. That's about 250,000.
And you just spoke about how we had given some grace because of COVID and all of these
Yeah.
things, but we're coming for you next year.
Yep, we are. Our numbers are down this year, but next year they're going to be up because we're going to do more compliance. Some of the fees are the tickets that we from the beach parking. That's one of the
Right,
fines
okay,
and fees.
great.
We get money from the courts. This other revenue source is, and I was talking to not the commissioner, but the city manager. We have 81 sources of revenue that that combine in our general fund. We have little things like business licenses, liquor licenses. We have so many small fees that add up to that 4.2.
And those things live in other revenue.
Yeah, they're
Okay, great. Good to know.
they're in that big spreadsheet you'll see is a whole bunch of lines. There's about 80 of them. And
Yes, Ken, there are so many lines.
That's the other revenue.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with everybody.
Did I see?
I did, but Commissioner Ramsey already asked my question about what falls under the other revenue. So
So if you look in, I could bring it up, and if you want to, if
The
you-
lines?
Yes, if you want to see the line, if you want to see them, like see those lines up there, those
Yeah.
are the other revenues.
Yes.
They, some of them are very small. Some are 5,000. Some are 75,000. But when you add them up, they add up to that 4 million. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I just know that if I'm not going to take the time to read those, that I can't imagine that anyone else would. And so just to kind of,
Yeah.
go
So
through that. what
yeah.
that
So
looks
that's what
like.
that other is. It's just a whole bunch of small categories that add up to a significant amount. So it's significant sometimes, but sometimes it's good for us to measure where we're at compared to the year before. Why? And like cable franchise fees, that's another fee in there that we get from Comcast. They give us 80,000 every quarter to, for what they collect because they use our infrastructure to provide cable to the citizens. So we get I would say a small check, but 80,000 every quarter or so from them. That's in that other category too.
Which is not a monopoly fee. There's a common misperception that the city issues a monopoly to Comcast to operate here, and we don't allow anyone else to operate. That's not the case. Others are welcome to operate here. Comcast does, and pays us a franchise fee in doing so.
Yep. So
My final statement for you, Dr. Dr. Grant,
that could be it.
I like
Director Grant.
I play one on TV.
There you go. I will be your nurse. Let's roll. Anytime that we can tease out anything that's done around Parks and Rec or parking revenue that we have coming in, to kind of start to create a separate report so that as we move forward, looking at how to increase our quality of life here in our beautiful city through our parks and extracurriculars. I don't know if my colleagues would or not, would love to see everything that's coming in specifically to that.
That's funny because the mayor wants the same thing. So I will create a.
I was giving him a hard time about it.
Yeah, I will create a report for our parking in our parks.
Well, and I say that because when I first said no, and then they said yes, I was like, fine. Then every dime that we make has to go back into parks in my neighborhoods where my neighbors can't get to this beautiful beach or don't have access to all these things, especially since we have a lackluster at best bus system in our county.
Does not go west of Barclay.
But that's a rant for another day.
So you want parks
Mrs.
report
Commissioner
and
Emery's
parking
entire
revenue,
ward,
right?
pretty much.
Yeah, because I think that as we move forward, we really need to be better stewards of those dollars to put them back into our community parks and neighborhood parks so that everyone can enjoy what our beautiful
You
city
want that
has to offer.
quarterly or?
I think it should be with our quarterly budget.
Okay.
And as we're doing reforecasts, and I think it'd be helpful to have a corollary parks and, I will say parks and rec budget that reflects, the revenue sources as well as the expenditures.
Yeah,
So
I
we can-
support that.
so we
Well, and
can
it also
have that-
give us an
that
idea of
transparency.
when to start asking, because Leo is amazing at his, Director Evans is amazing at his job, don't get it twisted. But maybe I drive by, I was just in Detroit, and they have that DeQuinder Cut, and they have this tiny little, 4-post workout stop on the run, right? Why can't we have one of those?
It's in progress.
Right, and so, but my question is, if I was going to ask that, I would want to know where that money would come from and how. And so instead of me just sending a text to Manager Mike Sell in the middle of the night, hey, want a workout park, where does it come from? I could be like, hey, I could send an email that was very thought out with a plan. And so thank you for that. I think that it's a great way for us to keep accountability.
Yeah, but I think that everybody's on board with that. I could provide that.
And to be clear, when I say it's a work in progress, it's not being driven by the city. We are providing support and assistance to the Beechwood Bluffton Neighborhood
Yes.
Association. That is spearheading that. So just another initiative where we're collaborating and not necessarily,
Supporting, not owning.
Yes.
Any other questions about the general fund? I can show you other funds or anything, but the general fund is the major one that I wanted to focus on.
I did hit.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Emery.
Can you scroll back up to the previous page? Okay, this.
Right here?
Yes. All right, I see that the parks maintenance, and I've asked this question before, is there a way that we can break it down into each park? I see we have McGrath Park, maintenance separate. Would that be the man to blame?
We don't currently keep track of parks separately except for McGrath. McGrath has a endowment fund
Right.
that we're allowed to draw from, so we have to support those. But the other parks we do not. But we can give you just the detail breakdown of the expenditure side of it for the parks. I don't, split out the revenue other than estimating, building rentals and things like that, which is a really small portion of park revenue. But if you would like to see a detail breakdown of the park expenses that total that 2.3, I'd be happy to share our spreadsheets with you so you can see everything that's out there.
I don't know, I just would like to see if it's at all possible, individual parks.
How much we pay to, I'm so sorry, I have a question for the commissioner. How much we pay to cut the grass at that particular park and how much goes
just
into
the
building up
maintenance
people.
at each one.
I mean, they'd be able to better answer, but I'm just, off the top of my head, I'm wondering if that may just be too challenging to provide the operating costs for each park. But we could show capital improvements for each park, capital expenditures for each park. But maybe you have some insights we could, pro rata show, you can get really granular and say, well, this park is X square feet and the total amount of acreage is, this, and So the amount that we're paying for cutting grass across all of our parks gets broken down to, pro rata to this park, pro rata to
Percentage
that
per
park.
park, yeah,
we could
that's
get
true.
super granular like that, I suppose. But I'm just
It
Well,
could. It
spitballing
would,
right
it would
now,
be
so
really
whatever ideas you
burdensome.
have.
It would be a lot of tracking in terms of,
Would it?
how many, I mowed 4 parks today. How many hours did I spend at this park? How many hours did I spend there? I got to write that on a timesheet. Somebody's got to put that all in. Whereas right now we just say, I mowed today. Here's my 8 hours. It would be administratively burdensome, I guess, would be
Okay.
the only thing I would say to that.
And I wouldn't want that because that wouldn't make it cost effective to even do such a study. So.
You would lose some of what you gain on it for sure.
Right.
I like the way you're thinking, though, of getting that greater clarity into each individual parks, because that also helps us ensure that
Yes.
equity, equitable investments in our park system.
And
across
and
our
not
city.
only that, but it shows transparency to our community that we're putting this much effort into Reese Park and Sheldon as we are into Pier Marquette. So that's what my concern is.
Yeah, that's good.
We can think
Did you
about
have
it. I can't give you a great answer today,
Okay.
but
Okay.
let me
You'll think
talk
about
to
it,
people
you'll
that
chew on
have
it.
to track all that and see what their thoughts would be.
Chew on it for a while
Yeah.
and get back to me.
Okay. Did you have any follow-up, Commissioner Emery?
No.
Okay. Well, while we're speaking about parks and while we're still in the general fund, what I don't see reflected in this budget is the reviving or recreation of our parks and recreation. That's why you heard me earlier say and recreation, emphasizing that as well, not just parks maintenance, but having a dedicated parks and recreation department. And my conversations with the manager and Director Grant, that fiscal constraints are holding us back from being able to move forward in a considerable way with reviving our parks and recreation department this time. However, I would like us to take a practical and symbolic step forward of creating that department and funding a department head for that department, and then lean on that new department head, which doesn't necessarily be filled right away, but as is appropriate. So if it's towards the end of the year, that saves us a little bit of money for this fiscal year. But funding that position and then leaning on that new department head to help shepherd the process of building out our Parks and Recreation department, of doing a comprehensive update to our Parks and Recreation master plan, of doing that concerted communication and engagement with our community to receive what our residents want to see throughout their park system, and then build out that park system, inclusive of potentially those parks attendants or DPW ambassadors, whatever we want to call them. We've had different names for that, but having dedicated people for our park system year round, and saves us a little bit of that hassle. Not entirely, we're still going to need seasonal employees, but at least we'll have some more continuity across our parks and more attention to our parks with that system. And so what I'd like us to do with this budget is establish that department and funding of a department head, and whether or not we then are able to create a couple additional year-round employees remains to be seen. We do have a park supervisor presently, and I would like us to have a parks department director.
On the screen, I do show the FTE for the Parks Department as it currently is, and the way it's budgeted for next year. Now, 0.85 means he's probably budgeted out of another fund. So if we wanted to add another position, I would have to get your, we have to add that to the FTE and add that to the budget if you're at your request. We can wait to the second or third quarter, whatever it's your pleasure, whatever you like to do.
Yeah. All right. My preference is to have it reflected from the get-go, but I'd welcome hearing from the commission, and we can fund that a number of different ways, whether we're drawing down savings to fund that, and if it's only being filled for half the year, then looks like our tentative or the surplus and a proposed budget could cover that entirely for that one position, or we can, identify ARPA dollars to allocate towards this. So there's a number of different ways we could fund that or plug that gap, or just draw down savings. But Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question of you, Mr. Mayor, but I think that Director Grant has sort of answered it. I would like to see a fiscal study about what it would cost to actually launch that department. So that includes a head, some sort of admin support, literally just for the in-house stuff, not even the physical out in the park cutting the grass or whatever that looks like, but what does it have to even start those what kind of dollars do we need to have to start those conversations to begin to build direction towards something that's comprehensive and encompassing, so that we can intentionally as a bench try to find those dollars so that we can begin to have these conversations around how we're going to rebuild the infrastructure around our community and neighborhood parks moving forward, because I think that it's super important. And if there's one thing we learned from COVID, they're necessary. And as we continue to look at the decline of our bus system and the increased visitation to our beautiful city, and what do they call that when people come visit you? Tourism, increased tourism. You know, a lot of our neighbors don't always want to go down to the beach on a Saturday night or a Saturday afternoon because they know it's going to be busy. So maybe they want to take their kids to their neighborhood park. So I would love to see, if it hasn't already been requested, a fiscal study on what it would, and Leo can give you, Director Evans can give you some insight about who would need to staff that to get it moving forward adequately, right? So not overstaffed, but like, you know, not bare bones, but what's a comfortable place to sit to begin to have those conversations so that they're real and relevant, Leo?
Which
20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we may have some of that already. I mean,
Right, exactly. I just want to see it all on one paper.
Because we had a work session back in March about some reconfiguration, you know, creating a new division and then creating a new department and so on and so forth, and then that was fleshed out into which positions go where and how to fund it. So we should have a framework already, a fiscal framework of which positions would be created and what that total cost would be. And that's what then give our finance department's heartburn about adding all of that right now. Given the fiscal constraints.
Which is also why I'm like.
But that's where a department head can further lead that process. So that's like the first step from a practical and I think symbolic, which is important, is having that department head created and to help then shepherd that process forward. And build out. Manager Mike Zell.
Thanks. So we do have a good idea of staffing, so we can figure out those costs. There would be more costs though, because we're talking about increasing services, and so you're right. We have a good start on this. There's definitely work to do.
So I would like to see a step 2.
Okay.
And it, you know, again, it's that 10,000-foot view. But I mean, let's begin to wrap our minds around it, and which is why I was like, can we see the dollars that are coming in from the fees and like, let's begin to say, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
We're taking this money. We said we would do this. You know, after we take the $700,000 and we take off the $200,000 for overhead, where's that other money going? And why is it not here? If that's an opportunity, I'm not cussing anybody out about that. I'm just saying, like, give us the tools to identify that and make the changes.
I just wanted to say something though. If we add it to the budget now, and you say you're going to put in ARPA dollars or savings for it, we're eventually going to run out of the ARPA dollars and the savings. So I think we almost need to know where we would get it long term before we add it.
So the ARPA dollars we can use up through 2026, so we could fund that for the next 4 years using ARPA dollars. Secondly, as we heard earlier, our fiscal situation is going to be supposedly dramatically improving by around that time as well. But then creating the position now, knowing that we can at least fund it from existing revenues for the next 4 years, like makes it top of mind for us going forward. Okay, money may run out by 2026. Let's make sure that we have the resources available for it.
But aren't most of the ARPA dollars spent already?
No. There's still quite a bit that has been unallocated. In fact, if worse comes to worse, there's a request to reallocate $1.15 million tomorrow that we could choose not to allocate and instead hold that in reserve and then potentially draw that down over the next 4 years to fund the build out of our Parks and Recreation Department. So rather than building another 4 houses, we use that money to invest in our parks and raise the quality of life in serving our current residents and our current community. But no, I hear where you're coming from. It's all about sustainability, and that's what I love hearing from our finance department. I want you to be conservative. I want you to, really look at the dollar and cents. We're like, hold up, Commission. I know you want everything, and you want to do all the things for our city. And so that's really important that we get, hey, did you think about this? Or how are we going to, make this truly sustainable for the long term. And that's why I'm like, we don't need to build out a full-on department with 30 people right this second.
No.
But let's start with that department head who then shepherds the process of the updating of the master Parks and Rec plan, of building out what kind of staffing we need and what kind of programming we may want to provide, or do we just going to lean on our community partners to provide that programming and we're just collaborating. And so having that department head build that out and then give us more clarity on what exactly we want to see in our Parks and Rec department. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you want us to put together information so that you understand if we fully implemented this, what would the cost be? You're not saying, let's implement it right now. Let's figure out the phased approach of implementing it.
I'm saying yes, but the first step for me is creating and hiring a Parks and Recreation department director.
Yep. Right.
Correct. And if we are able to, create a couple of parks attendant positions at the same time, for instance, we hypothetically were not to reallocate that $1.15 million tomorrow and instead hold in a reserve to fund the build out of our Parks and Recreation department, spend that out over 4 years, that's going to be over $250,000, which could support a Parks and Recreation department director as well as a couple other positions on an annual basis. Also, so that's at least one way to fund that over the next 4 years. But Commissioner Emery, I'm sorry, Manager Maxwell, did you have
Nope.
anything else? Commissioner Emery? Did you lose your...
I lost my whole train of thought. I agree. I would love to see Parks and Recreation area again. I would like to know, does anybody here know why we ended it?
It was previously the Leisure Services Division, and that, due to budget constraints, was ended, I think, in 2008 or thereabouts. What's that?
Yeah.
It's in 2008. Times were tough.
Yeah. So at that time, the division was dissolved, and there was a Leisure Services committee that was a citizen advisory as well. That was dissolved.
We sold the golf course.
And then, the Chase Hammond Golf Course was sold, and so, times were tough in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to let you know that in our budget, we do have like I don't want to steal all her thunder, but we do have $1.4 million in ARPA funds that help us balance the budget and work on. So that's part of the budget process. So I just want to be so ARPA money we are eating it up faster than we realize.
Yeah. Well, and I think going back to Jessica. I'm trying to remember your last name. Rabe? Mrs. Rabe. Or Jessica. It's a work session. I'm just going to call people by the first names now. Jessica. You mentioned earlier the question of have we already allocated all our ARPA dollars? And I think what you're maybe referring to is that our
10 million.
our 10 million allotment, or what's the word that we...
The standard allowance.
Standard allowance, that's what it is. The 10 million standard allowance. Is that what you're referring to? Is have we already used all of that?
Well, we used that, but then we've used quite a bit of others. So that's why I was thinking.
Okay.
There's a lot been used and allocated already.
Yeah. So we still have, to my knowledge, a good amount of room in the unallocated portion. And then we could even redirect some of the allocated portion. That's where I'm referring to that $1.15 million. That's of the $10 million. And then what we have outside of that $10 million, there's still some money flexible there, because we were consciously not committing to allocating every penny at this time, so that our great staff, led by Peter Wills, is really, taking up that mantle of finding all those other resources out there through the federal infrastructure bill and other grants, and capture as many of those other dollars that are out there in the ether and in the feds in the state, and bringing them back home to us, so that once we have that identified, then we can say, okay, now we feel comfortable allocating the remaining dollars of ARPA, because we know quantifiably what we're able to get elsewhere. But
I can either condemn or condone what the mayor has said about where those dollars come from until I see how much it's going to cost us. And I will reiterate again, for me, I would love to see this come from the monies that are the revenue from the parking out at Pure Marquette, so that we know it's sustainable and we continue to prove to our neighbors that we can do this in a way that's real for their kids' kids. So that we don't have another 2008.
And another option, there are a lot of different options to fund this.
Right.
And another option, speaking of parking revenues, is to for us, and it's forthcoming for us to add fewer parking spots as part of the forthcoming reengineering, reconfiguring of parking over at Pure Marquette. That's one. That's capital saving. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying you talk about parking revenues. That parking revenue is being used to fund the reconfiguration and expansion of parking at Pure Marquette. And so, is there a way to scale that back in scope then to free up money at least in this first year? So there's just a lot of different ways to fund this. What I'm looking for is a commitment from this commission to say it is important for us to create this department and create this position, and then let staff figure out what they think is their preferred way of funding it with the many different approaches, some of which I've referenced or highlighted tonight. And so, commissioners, do you want a budget reflecting the creation of the revival of our Parks and Recreation Department and the creation of a Parks and Recreation Director? Vice Mayor Jeremy.
Yeah. Before I could even, I guess, vote on something like that, I'd like to see some type of proposal, budget, outline, forecasting, what it's going to cost, the operation, strategies, and how many staff. What's that?
We're asking to create one position.
Oh, yeah.
And have the budget be updated to reflect that one position.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's something you want to vote on tomorrow?
I would like this budget to reflect that. And in order,
okay.
I can't, compel staff to change the budget to reflect that. We, as a commission, have talked about the importance of reviving the Parks and Recreation Department. We did that at a work session a few months ago. This budget doesn't reflect that, and I understand that. I have no qualms with staff's proposed budget. They need to be conservative, and they want to show, and they're not going to be necessarily recommending a budget that shows drawdowns of savings unless it's absolutely necessary. And what I'm saying is that if we want to use that option, that's one option of funding this, is that we have built up a very healthy general fund. It is that inclusive of our budget stabilization fund, it is approximately 36% of our general fund expenditures. And the state recommendation is that you have 13% of general fund expenditures in your general fund savings. We are nearly 3 times that. And so we have an opportunity to potentially draw down those savings to invest in our community and raising the quality of life for our community, or at least get that ball rolling and showing so in a practical and symbolic way that we are creating that department. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to come from savings. We could plug that gap other ways, whether it's ARPA or freeing up capital expenditures elsewhere. There are a number of different ways that we can do that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm just asking the commission, and I talked to staff about this, and so they're just like, well, you will bring that up at the commission and ask for the commission to say, yes, we would like this. This is the consensus among the commission, or at least I would like it for all of us, but at least the majority of us saying, hey, this is important to us, and we would like this reflected in our budget going forward.
I know we talked about it and had that discussion before, and looking back, years ago before I got here, how the operation worked with leisure services at that time. I'm open, to that. Where the funding's going to come from, I guess that, again, have to be decided by us, the commission. Looking at the general fund, we definitely have the revenue for it. So right now I'm just kind of undecided where, I would like for it to come from. Mm-hmm. But I'm not closed-minded to anything like that. Yeah.
I'm undecided on where the money should come from.
Yeah,
There's a lot of others, so I have keep on talking about all the different options. I don't necessarily have an opinion on exactly where that should come from, but I know that we have options. Is what I'm thinking in terms of how we would fund that. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Emery, did you?
I just wanted to say that I absolutely support the idea. Absolutely. And, our community deserves it. Our kids deserve it. Mm-hmm. Our families deserve it. Our residents and especially in today's age, get them outside and in our parks. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I also see an investment in our parks as supporting further economic development and raising the taxable value. So that's one way that makes it more sustainable over long term too, as we are investing in our parks and increasing the taxable value of our community. That will help sustain those investments in the parks, from my perspective. But Commissioner Gorman, you want to weigh in on this at all?
I'm good. Thank you.
I saw you nodding your head in approval previously. Do you want to at least share whether or not you support the creation of a department, of reviving the Parks and Recreation Department and the establishment of a director position in this budget?
Yes, I absolutely support that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner St. Clair.
I'm also in support. I think that this is a long time coming, and there will always be a lot of really good reasons why now is not the time, and a lot of very fiscally responsible reasons why now is not the right time. And I don't want to discount that at all. I know where the city was in 2008. And I know how quickly things can shift directions, but I do think that this is, a wise and prudent step towards building something back, maybe something entirely new, but I think it's symbolic and also an actual step that we can take that isn't just symbolism.
Just to get clarification, when we talk, we potentially want to add this halfway through the year. I could budget it for a position and start it maybe in January or so I could get.
Yeah, I think when we talked, you and Leanne, we were thinking that potentially it would be filled later this calendar year, whether that's starting right in January or that's starting in November or December. Like what works out for staff in terms of creating, posting, hiring, and when is the most opportune time for them to be placed in that position. That I'm.
Okay. So
I'm
tomorrow,
gonna defer to you all on that. I just want the position created and reviving the department
right now we're
and
looking
making
at
progress going forward.
Our FTEs for this year. I mean to take it to the top so you can see it. The budgeted positions for 22-23. Right now, I have parks with 9.85 positions. So what is the position you want me to create so I can have it?
The Parks and Recreation Director.
I'll update the budget with that position added in the cost for halfway through the year. Is that fine? Okay, I'll have that ready for you tomorrow.
Commissioner Ramsey, did you?
I'm not voting for anything that we haven't seen a fiscal report for or a fiscal forecast for, because a dream without a plan is called a hallucination.
It is reflected in the budget tomorrow, is what we're asking him to do, is to reflect, whether it's tomorrow or 2 weeks from tomorrow. We need to adopt a budget before the end of June. If we don't adopt it tomorrow, we have our second general session. What we're asking Director Grant is to have this budget updated to reflect the creation of that position and the funding of that position.
Love it. Throw an admin in there too. They're going to need some support. But before we hire anyone or do anything about this, there has to be a sustainability plan, because otherwise, just like the accountability that they spoke to earlier, it's not going to happen. I don't care where the money comes from. I don't care if it comes off the tree in the backyard. I want this to happen. This is not me fighting it. But it has to be sustainable, because otherwise we're going to get a bunch of fun park stuff out there and then it's all going to go to crap again. And it's going to be me and my neighbors in a park cleanup. And I don't want that. So I support every single bit of this. I would love a huge Parks and Recreation Department to the tune of $10 million. But in the meantime, we got to find out where that comes from. I don't care where you put it or how it does. I just want us to have a plan.
Absolutely.
Support.
Absolutely.
We could just have the police start handling parks.
Yes.
Hey, you want that extra responsibility?
Now that could be a new scope of work for those community officers. They're going to kill me.
Before I go anywhere else, if you have any other questions, I wanted to go back to resolution, and I know Ken, or no, I'm gonna say Mayor Johnson. I'm Ken too, but Mayor Johnson, he always.
I know it gets
asks me-
confusing when we start calling Ken and Ken and
I know.
like amongst in this room.
One of the things I know you're going to ask me about is the sewer fund. I think we're going to be out of the hole this year. and I know Leo and I and Leanne think we're going to do a rate study at the end of the year to determine where, before we come to you about some raises and things like that. I think the sewer fund is looking good this year, but the water fund may be a little ugly this year. So that's why we have to do a rate study, because so it's a constant battle with the infrastructure. So, so that's one of the things that I think we're going to use 800,000 of our ARPA funds to help with the infrastructure and the water fund. I'll let Leanne, the city manager, talk about that later. So I just wanted to point those are bigger funds to the sewer and the water.
So it looks like, because you're right on point, that I'm going to inquire about the sewer fund and what a rate is, and whether or not we can start rolling that back, because that was a considerable increase at the, last fiscal year when it went up 25%.
I let the rate study tell you, not me, because I'll probably tell you it's not going to probably happen, but I let the rate study show and let them tell you why it won't, because infrastructure, everything is going up, you know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So-
I'm still going to be very keen on providing financial relief to our residents as well as to our manufacturers.
Absolutely.
And so I'm still going to be very keen on that 25%
I agree.
increase was extenuating circumstances. That wasn't just inflation. That was extenuating circumstances. So if we have opportunity to roll that back to some extent, maybe not fully, because, obviously inflation is a factor, I'm still going to be very keenly interested in trying to
we're going
provide
to
some
get
of
an
that financial relief.
independent person out here and look at it and see where we're at. And
I'll save you from trying to roll any portion of it back now, because I'm like, come on, since we're increasing the sanitation fee by $1 a month, can we
that's going to be
can we knock off 5% on the sewer rate or something? Offset it, provide some relief, but I'll spare you that.
I went through it pretty fast, and the city manager is going to do a PowerPoint presentation. Before I go and let her do hers, I just wanted to show you the allocation by employees by department, and I don't know if you want to look at it or not, but overall, from last year to this year, we're adding, with the one tomorrow, we're going to be adding 2 positions from last year to this year. So, and we're doing really good. We're not doing a lot of hiring. We're allocating staff differently from some departments, but from last year to this year, we're going to have right now it's 1, but tomorrow if I add the other one, it'll be 2 positions for the whole city, and I think that's good.
So can you elaborate on that? Because I understood that we were hiring a communications person. I also heard there was a position of development services being created. And then now we just talked about a Parks and Recreation Department director. As those were the communications and the development service positions not full time? They were like half time, and they make one.
We're adding, I think that's under the manager's office, the one person that we're adding.
Well, I can answer that. So essentially, with the communications position, we're talking about potentially 2 people, but it's kind of possibly an expansion of duties of one position, and the movement of another person from economic development to communications. And then there would be a backfill for that person. So the way we're hoping to do it is it's really only a net increase of 1, but there's still some work to do, and ensuring that what I'm understanding so far from the involved departments is that it should work out to do it
So
that
it'd be
way.
a net increase of 1.
Net increase
basically.
of 1.
Now,
But some shifting around. And then we also plan to hire 3 more firefighters. Those are
that was gonna be my next question.
Yeah,
or
those-
confirm.
those were our count is the same this year as it was last year, but we do have 3 open positions that we intend to fill this year.
Okay. Yeah.
Plus
So
a
will
Parks
be-
and Rec director.
Well, then yes,
Head,
then we'll add
whatever.
that one too.
Insert proper word here.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll figure out what the title is.
I have
But
a
yeah,
question.
We left them on our official roster, the firefighters in the previous fiscal year, but they were
Oh,
not.
that's why they're not
They were not hired.
Gotcha.
But now we're going to be filling them,
Yes.
and that's going to get us up to 9 per shift.
Yes.
9 per shift. All right. Excellent progress.
Question: The communications position, that the sole purpose of that would be what?
That's going forward with some of the plans that we had. The mayor mentioned the work session back in March where we talked about possible reorganization plans. And so there was a high priority placed on community engagement. And so that's what that position is.
Yeah, we at our previous work session, or not previous work session, but that work session that she's referencing, we had discussed the possibility of creating a community support and engagement division. And this commission has voiced its support for building out our engagement and our communications, recognizing that communications both internally and externally is one of our areas that could see significant improvement. And so that's what we were thinking. But given the fiscal constraints, staff had to make modifications, but they still recognized that communications was very important to this commission, and that's why they brought forward a budget that sees the communications position being created.
Yes.
Where did we land on city additional event support staff with just the increase in look at what we did last weekend. So, and I realize that it is event specific when it happens, but we had a department that worked probably 50 hours in a day and a half. So
Yeah.
I just don't remember where we landed on that conversation.
Well, where we landed was that we were going to look at the budget and see what the budget could support, and the budget could support one position. And so we landed
Is that
on
one of the one then,
communications.
Director Grant, you're referring to that we're seeing?
Community,
On this?
It's community engagement person. That's what we
Okay.
have it in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been because I concur with you on the need for additional resources or support there, and I've talked with Manager Mike Zell, and we'll have some conversations with our city clerk as well about how we might be able to identify some additional resources
Okay.
or reimbursement of staff time that's used on that. So how can we unlock more resources?
Yeah.
To
No, I just
support
wanted to make
those
sure
efforts?
it was reflected because it's very easy to fall into next year we will have more help, and then we
Right, which
march
is
on.
why we're taking immediate action about this Parks and Rec head, right? So let's consider what we just said. We just said throw somebody in our budget, and I said throw an admin in there too. Yay! And yet we're saying that we don't have the money to support staff who were already out doing this work literally over the weekend. And congrats on a wonderful event for this weekend. I've heard nothing but rave
Amazing,
reviews about it.
amazing.
I know that your team blew it out of the park, so kudos and thank you so much. But we're literally saying in the same breath, we can't afford to support our people who are already doing this work.
Right.
But let's create a new department. I'm not, again, I want to use every dime we can out of that parking out of Marquette Park to pay for this stuff. I don't want to seem like I'm not coming off as a supporter, but for someone who doesn't understand a lot of the financial aspects, this is a red flag for even me. And so what are we doing to mitigate and to ensure sustainability? That's all I just want us to be sure.
I think it could be helpful if I could do the budget presentation.
Yeah.
Because we keep talking about all the
Are you
things
just
that
telling
are
us to
in
be
my
quiet and
budget
let you do your
presentation.
job? We'll do
Well,
that.
I'm just
I
saying
will
that,
do that.
Some of those answers
Stop it.
might be
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. That's all I have. If you don't have any more questions, I'll let the city manager present the
That's
budget.
all. It's only been 45 minutes, Ken.
Well, she still got time to go.
Can we what you shared earlier?
Which one?
Not all the lines. The other one, and then maybe it's in her presentation. Some of those the 5-year fiscal forecast, and then the different charts. Typically, that's in our budget.
She's gonna
is
show
that
you all that.
forthcoming? Okay.
If you have any questions after that, I'll be glad to answer.
Okay.
He said, "Let me go."
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Grant.
Oops.
The floor is yours.
Yes. All right. So if Ann can switch us back to me.
Gift cards.
Is he up there? Not yet.
Derek.
Technology is fantastic when it works.
Just want me
There
to
it
Oh,
goes.
there it is. Okay.
I think there's just a bit of a delay with
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Just enough to panic.
Right, just enough for us to think it's not going to work. Alrighty, so starting off with the general fund, a lot of this will be familiar. So I just wanted to again point out that property tax, income tax, and state revenue make up more than 50% of our general fund revenues. I had the same question for our finance director about, well, miscellaneous and other seems to be a lot. So how do we just say that? And, so he's explained that for you. Salaries and benefits comprise more than half of our expenditures. And this has been pointed out in the past. We're a service agency. So that's, personnel is just our biggest cost. So I wanted you to be able to see this. This is just showing some trends. So you can see places where revenue has increased, but you can also see there are places where it has decreased. And so it's really remaining fairly static for us overall. Expenditures are overall increasing. And again, this is just meant to show you some trends over 3 years. These charts show trends as well because we have the 3 years, but we've broken it out so you can see which departments are costing how much percentage of the general fund budget. So, Ken already talked about the pension obligations. So we do think that we can smooth this over the next 14 years. And we were really going to, I probably should have included that chart that MERS sent us, but it was going to be the next 5 years that we were going to have really significant costs. So this smoothing process is going to help us dramatically. All right, some things I want you to note. We go through our budget process and we meet with all the department heads and we understand what their wants and needs are. And we put everything together, we meaning the finance department, and then we see where we are overall. And we found that there wasn't enough revenue to cover all of what we wanted to spend. So the budget includes $650,000 in ARPA dollars to cover, this is just the general fund, and this is even after we made cuts. So we took all the expenses with the exception of salaries and reduced them all by 5%. We also delayed some capital projects and reduced some capital project scopes, including beach parking. So even with those cuts, we ended up needing ARPA dollars to help us with our general fund. So this is part of why I wanted to share this with you, because this conversation about adding more staff, I don't think anybody in this room would dispute the need for additional staff here. And I feel like we're all feeling the pressure for that. The problem is that we don't have the revenue for it. And so we're trying to make decisions on where to add based on what we've heard from the commission of what's most important. And, we are happy to take a different direction if that communication position is not it, or if the Parks and Rec department is not it. But this is where we are. And something that Ken already pointed out too is the paid parking program. We really wanted to do a better job of showing you the costs of that because it does have a cost. And, I think one of the problems that we're having with this budget, because we are showing that we keep having these great years in income tax and property taxes are increasing. The problem is that costs are increasing faster than our tax is. So we talked about the positions. And one thing I wanted to note too is, in looking at our goals and how some of those tie to our budget, we did increase some funding for our neighborhood beautification program this year, and that's going to help with addressing blight. So in the street funds, what's notable here, I mean, it's helpful for you to see that we're doing some street projects. The problem is that in our local street fund, you can see that we don't have enough revenue coming in to cover our operations expenses. And that means we're spending nothing on capital for our local streets. And I believe Leo has shared with me that we have about 115 miles of local streets. So those roads are not getting resurfaced, they're not getting reconstructed unless we have some water or sewer project to go along with it. So we need to develop a strategy for how we're going to handle these roads, because they don't last forever. The market and the arena, a couple of things to note. The farmers market is receiving $50,000 in a general fund transfer this year. That's $25,000 less than last year. So we're going in the right direction. Good job, Ann. The arena fund is becoming more balanced, and the staff there are working to find more ways to get revenue. So kudos to Jake. The capital projects for the arena include ADA upgrades and rubber floor replacement. If you're interested in hearing about creepy things, you can talk to Jake about the rubber flooring and why it's needed. It's pretty disgusting. So public improvement fund and marina funds. Public improvement, as you probably know, is our account for doing capital projects. There's expected to be an influx of cash in the public improvement fund this year because we are selling the Pine Street properties that Tim Harvey had renovated, and the Isabella home that is in progress to the Community Neighborhood Services Department. So that will bring cash to the public improvement fund. Ken's very happy about that. And another fund here that really is going to need some strategy is the Marina Fund. With the T-Dock missing, we just don't have as many slips to rent, and so our revenue is dropping, and the expenses or the need to spend money isn't reduced all that much. Right now the amount of money that it costs to replace that T-Dock is just doesn't make sense for what we might be able to make in the future. So what I can say is that having the kiosks located at the launch ramps has improved our ability to collect funds. We used to have this system where it was kind of an honor system where you put your check in an envelope and stuck it in a post. And so anyway, it saves staff a bunch of time from having to go collect all that stuff and deal with all the checks. With our parking enforcement, it makes it more likely that people will comply. Moving on to the utility funds, as Ken had mentioned, this is another place you can see in the water revenues. There's $800,000 proposed there in ARPA. The water fund was another place where we had projects already planned. We have already awarded the Houston project, and we just don't have the funds to cover the water main replacement. And so I suggested that we use ARPA funds to fill that gap because the utilities are 100 years old and we're reconstructing the road, so it really doesn't make sense to leave them in place.
Right.
I do have lists of projects that are planned for these funds. Water is Houston from 9th to 3rd, which you saw on the streets page because it's funded by a number of different categories here. So that will be water, sewer, and road funding. Sanford from Laketon to Apple, same deal, water, sewer, and road. There are water and sewer projects on Haddon in Glenside. This is just another phase of that work there to get the utilities out of the old alleys that don't really exist anymore. There's plan for Thayer Street, which is that little tiny, not even a block long, back by the exit from the arena. There's some work planned for the filtration plant, roofing, chemical tanks, number of different things. and Harvey Reservoir is getting some work as well. So the 5-year forecast, we're not really predicting any major changes at the time. It is likely that the fund balance, so you'll see here, this chart shows our predictions with the fund balance really growing significantly. It's not really likely that that will happen. It's more likely that we'll increase services that all of you request, with Parks and Recreation and communication, housing subsidies, and those kinds of things. Well, I'm not trying to be funny. Like, we all know that there are things that we want to do, and so as we, as our revenue grows, that it's most likely that we'll be
Raise
able
our
to do
service
those
levels.
things. That's what we want to do. So that's all I have.
Excellent. I love seeing this.
I know. It looks great.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah, we should-
I didn't realize you had.
Okay, I'm going to
seriously,
support
yeah.
everything. We should have started here.
I didn't realize
I didn't know.
it wasn't in our packet, so I wasn't sure if there was a
Yeah.
presentation or not.
Yes. Yes.
Specific.
I can
So-
email this to all of you if you would like to have it.
Please.
Yeah, that would be
Sure.
Super helpful.
welcome. Can we? Because in years past, our budget that we
I know.
adopt and have on
It's like-
the website also includes like these charts and forecasts and some more context, and like typically there's a readout, like in the manager and the finance director explaining just top line,
Yep,
like
I have
text.
I have the memo done too.
Okay.
I was just waiting to make sure everything was finalized.
We do that after you approve it.
Can
make
we-
it pretty.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, the written stuff is usually with us beforehand. Can we get that added and then uploaded to the website, and then have the budget reflect that new Parks and Rec Department division with or Parks and Rec Department head, with the expectation that we're going to adopt this at our second general session in June, not tomorrow. So you have more. So you're not scurrying tonight and tomorrow to update and reflect that, but bring that forward to our second general session, and then that also gives the commission and the public more time just to digest what's all in the budget, and then have that readout as well that typically explains it, so that folks that aren't numbers and data oriented can read it and have context as to what does all this mean budget wise, and how we're spending it, and how things have changed from.
You want to adopt it tomorrow?
So you don't want to adopt
No.
it tomorrow?
Want it on the agenda tomorrow?
No, if you want to talk about it again tomorrow,
no, that's fine.
we can. But no, I'm just thinking, get. If you look back at the city budgets page, and then it shows all the budgets over the years. Like last year's budget has like a memo that explains
Yeah,
all
we
that.
usually
Yeah,
do that. We
I have
normally when we do the proposed budget, we just give you the raw data, and then once we approve it, we do add those, and we add. But I can add them before if you want to.
Yeah, the thing is that I include numbers in here, and so if we're going to change the budget, then these won't reflect what's in the budget. So that's why I was waiting and not,
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes perfectly sensible.
because I'll change it so that it matches.
Yeah. So yeah, can we just get it like updated, and then with the expectation that we'll be bringing this forward to our second general session in June for actual adoption.
Along with the fourth quarter, so we'll have the fourth quarter on that same.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So we have to adopt it.
Right.
that
I was
one.
gonna say everybody needs to be ready then
Yeah.
to adopt it.
Yeah. I don't want to have a special meeting in
Me
June for just adopting the
Slightly.
budget.
Well, and we won't have many
Yeah.
days left in June.
Yeah. We already have enough special meetings.
Okay, I could do that.
So we are removing it from tomorrow, correct? And we're gonna put it on, okay, just wanna make sure, thank you.
Plus, well, that sanitation thing will be approved before we make the budget, because that's on the tomorrow's.
Oh,
day. Yeah.
right. Okay,
Okay.
that'd be good.
Okay. Excellent. Are we looking at? There's gonna be a water rate increase resolution as well forthcoming. Will that
The
be?
water rate is we approved
That's
it for
automatic.
5 years.
We already did
This
that.
is the last year of that 4%.
So it'd be next fiscal year we'd have to reinitiate. Okay, which our rate study will help inform whether or not to continue 4% annual increases or
Right.
deviate. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Dr. Grant. Commissioner Ramsey, did you have something to ask or add?
Yes, I have something to add, and then I'm going to be done, and you're all going to hold me accountable for it. Given light of what the city manager has just shared, I would like to first of all thank the city manager and the team, because what we just saw was a lot of hard financial decisions, and to pull money out of those ARPA funds, and to make that decision is something that we typically don't do. We love to kick the can and have a lot of discussion, but I love direction and decision making, and so I want to thank you for those recommendations that were in black and white. It pains me to see that we have to whittle away at those ARPA dollars to do things like this, but I understand that we have the funds to do so, and so we do that with them. So thank you for that. I cannot in good conscience say that I want to add a head of Parks and Rec, even though I completely support it when we're looking at already running in a deficit, especially if I have to say that our city clerk's office has to work 120 hours a week collectively to put on an event, and yet we don't have the money to pull support for them. I am going to continue to support someone for communications because I think that it's super important that we begin to repair and rebuild or reestablish, or whatever words we want to use, the relationships with our neighbors so that they know what we're doing and how we do it. It speaks to what people call transparency. I call systems of accountability, so that we're always on the same page with understanding moving forward. I want to again say for the 15th time that I think that we need to take some of these ARPA dollars, and look at a 3-year contract with someone specifically for grant go-getting, because I know that there's money out there, especially from the federal government right now, to help offset costs for things like we have with Parks and Rec because of COVID. And we know that there is a need for these outdoor spaces to be enhanced and increased so that our neighbors have a place to visit and be a part of community in the outdoors. And then is there a way for us to look at, and this is a question for people that I don't know the answer to, you don't have to answer me today. Is there a way for us to look at the income that comes from our events? That's assuming there is income. I know we have had some situations where there's not. But if we plan events from the beginning to have income, is there a way to look at the income from those events and have some of that income go automatically toward an FTE for someone who supports those events out of their clerk's office, so that that position pays for itself through the work that they do, eh? I'm not that person. I don't know what that looks like, but it seems like a pretty logical thing to me. If we can operate in, for anyone who's operated a business, you understand that if you can't operate in the red, then you don't operate. And so if we can't afford to do events, then we can't do them. But if to put on a great event and not overwhelm our staff, put our money where our mouth is. Hold me accountable. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey, and we are very much of like mind. And I've had those conversations with Manager Mike as well with regard to those events. Without getting into it too deeply right now, there are 2 events, the Lakeshore Art Festival and Taste of Muskegon, that we use the DDA as the fiduciary, and then we have City Clerk's Office provide support for those events. It's my understanding when we housed it with the DDA, it was out of necessity, that the DDA or the event itself, the program income, let's say, would be reimbursing the city for our staff's time to support those events. I don't believe that's been happening to the adequate extent, if at all. And so those conversations need to be had, and we should be expecting that program income to be reimbursing the city for our staff's time. We should not be making our city clerk's office freely available for those events that are being operated through the Downtown Development Authority. And so either using that program income or and presumably both events are profitable, and we're going to ensure they're profitable going forward. But yes, and I was talking to the manager just before the meeting as well about reserving, capital to use for funding next year's event. So you've got adequate capital to work with there, but then properly reimbursing our staff's time, and then also potentially, and this is another conversation that Dave and the DDA will have to have, is that initially Taste of Muskegon, when the city took it on, was it 4 years ago now, 5 years ago? Around that time, when we originally took it on, it was with the expectation that we were taking on, and that event was going to be used as a fundraising initiative for our farmers market. And so now we had to move that into the DDA, and the DDA serves as its fiduciary. So the question is, do we still expect this to be used in part as a fundraiser for our farmers market? In which case, we're going to have that conversation with the DDA, and have a budget, like so much is held in reserve for the next event, so much is used to reimburse us to reflect the true cost of that event, and then if there's proceeds left, which portion of that, if any, should go to our farmers market. And I personally think some portion should go to our farmers market. I think it is reasonable for our Downtown Development Authority to support, to some extent, at least through this event, our farmers market, which, as we see, operates as a deficit every single year, and the city's general fund is used to subsidize and make that fund whole. And so as we can identify other resources to support our farmers market, as well as our city clerk's office and the admirable work that they do, then let's do so. So again, long roundabout way of saying yes, total in agreement there, Commissioner Ramsey. But hopefully, I'm giving some additional context and
Absolutely.
insights to improve your understanding and others' understanding. But that is a conversation that we're going to be having to have on how we proceed going forward. And perhaps, Mr. Alexander, hearing this as well, can carry it forward to the DDA's meeting tomorrow. And as they have a conversation surrounding their budget, I don't know if their budget is a current version of their budget anticipates reimbursing the city or otherwise contributing to a farmer's market. But
The DDA budget discussion tomorrow will be on the captured dollars of the TIF as it relates to downtown issues. Events is a separate item, and the difficulty with events is at the two events that this office is doing for us are happening right at the beginning and end of your fiscal year. But events may have gotten a lot of cash last Friday and Saturday, which were record amounts for that park and for that event, and for what this community has supported. But understand that the actual payout of the expenses goes on for the next 2 or 3 months, literally, as bills come in and as things are justified. So it's really until fall are we going to be able to go back to the DDA and say, we did a market this year, which was the new event that we had in March. We did a taste in that we did a Lakeshore Art Festival, which is going to happen the last weekend of your fiscal year. So it's very difficult for us to say what that looks like until really we get to fall. And at that point in time, there will be surplus funds, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that that's where we're at right now. So where we do with those, I think staff needs to sit and talk and come up with a recommendation for the DDA as to where we go with that. How much is held in reserve? What are you going to need are we going to need for next year going forward? And how we want to deploy those funds and pay for staff costs that are obviously substantial as we put those events on.
all right, excellent. Yeah, and not to mention our DPW support that we provide those events. So yeah, there's a number of different ways, but I realize we're not going to get a resolution on that tomorrow, but I appreciate that it's on your radar.
It is, and it'll be discussed, and we'll have a report both from Taste, and I was just at the meeting, as Commissioner walked into, the final meeting of the board of the Lakeshore Art Festival, and their dollars also are looking very good going into the event at the end of the month.
Excellent. Thank you.
And just from someone who's been a part of many, many, many of these events for years, we also know that right now, Muskegon community is out in full force because we have been cooped up for way too long. And so these wonderful numbers that we're seeing, not that they're not indicative of our wonderful opportunities for people to come out and enjoy themselves, but they're not always going to be constant. Things will begin to pare back. And as people are like, okay, I've been out of my house a couple times, we're not going to have 100,000 people in Hackley Park every weekend. That's not the gig. But we appreciate it while it's happening. So as we look at that forecast and planning, we know that it's not always going to look that way.
And it's weather dependent.
No.
And thank goodness the rain held off for Taste of Muskegon.
Yeah, I just put, my computer just keeps having the worst timing. So this is my budget memo, and I just put up on the screen, if it will come back on, the portion on the DDA. And so Taste and Lakeshore Art Festival last year, made $11,500 and $11,000 respectively. I mean, I certainly expect this year to be much different. But to Commissioner Ramsey's point, you just don't know what you're going to make. And so $11,000 isn't going to go very far in covering the time of that the staff put into that event. So, I mean, it will be a choice to make whether it goes to staff or it goes to the farmer's market.
Gotcha.
Because there won't be enough for both, I don't think.
No, not based upon
I
that.
mean, the clerk's office puts, a ridiculous number of hours in, and so
Yeah,
if we count that cost, it's big.
Yeah, I think that, personally, my priority is in properly reimbursing our staff for the work they put into that so that there are resources to support them, whether that's to build out capacity or otherwise. And in terms of farmers market, I am happy to continue subsidizing. I don't want to get out of crazy, get into, six figures necessarily. I don't want to get to the extent that we've had to subsidize the arena in years past, but I'm perfectly content with subsidizing our farmers market to a reasonable amount. Previously I was kind of a stickler where I was like, hey, we got to get that farmers market, solvent or net neutral. And part of that was because when that farmers market was moved, a decade ago, it was sold to the community and to the city. I wasn't on the commission at the time, but it was sold to the community and the commission that it would not cost the city anything additionally. And at that time, the market was revenue positive before it was moved. And so that's why over the years I've been one of those voices that says, hey, let's get this, to break even. But given the importance of that market and how great of a benefit it is to our community, I'm not necessarily so, insistent on it has to be break even. I'm okay with a reasonable amount of subsidy. Although, yes, let's always be mindful of trying to get it to be break even as much as possible.
Again, Mr. Mayor, if we were to take some of these ARPA dollars and fund someone for a 3-year contract to be a grant go-getter, we might be able to find some additional dollars to support our farmers.
So I've asked staff that multiple times, not about using the ARPA dollars for that necessarily. Depends. From our general allotment, we might be able to use some ARPA dollars for that. But I've asked staff a number of times, like, do you need us to hire a contract? Do we need to contract that out to provide the additional support? And I've yet to receive a yes, that's the way to go. That unless things have changed, I think that the thought is that it can be handled at least internally, but that may not be their preferred choice. That's just where the dollars are, and so I don't know. I'll let the manager speak on that if she feels that we should seek that out, or maybe she wants to chew on it.
I'd like to chew on it, please.
I believe in Pete Wills and his grant writing skills personally.
I do believe in him, definitely. Did a great job.
I do have a question though. Well, a comment.
Commissioner Grant.
Director Grant, if you have the budget changes we discussed ready tomorrow, I'm ready to start reviewing them for our meeting in June. And I just want to say, if it's not tomorrow, but I'm ready to see those. So I
could make the changes tomorrow.
I just don't want you defeated that we're not doing it tomorrow. But the more time I can have to review every line item before we vote on it, and I would encourage all the other commissioners to be ready as well, because I really don't want to put us in a position in 2 weeks where we're not ready when we need to pass that.
So you want me to make the changes tonight or tomorrow?
I'm not saying do it tonight. I'm just saying I'm ready to receive them when you're ready.
As soon as practicable.
Yeah, as soon as practicable.
I can update it tomorrow. I think I can have it ready tomorrow.
I feel like you can too, but
Okay. I was ready to go.
No. I just mean in your eagerness to do. I felt like you were visibly like, oh, we're not doing this tomorrow. But
I was ready to go.
I'm ready.
Like, I'll make those adjustments and have them to you tomorrow morning. Just because it's only adding one position,
Right.
I can have that ready, and I can update the resolution. I can do that. If you're really
And then
ready.
I'll update whatever I have to update and get on them.
Yeah, we'll have it ready for you tomorrow.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Grant. All right, unless there's any other final questions or comments with regard to the budget, we're moving on. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Director Grant, and Jessica, and your entire team for your work on that budget, and all the department heads. Yeah. All right, we got Leo with traffic studies.
All right.
Yeah.
We're learning from our hindsight and our past mistakes, and we're coming before you before posting an RFP this time. We would like to post RFPs later this month to do traffic studies on Apple Avenue and Getty Street. The goal of those traffic studies would be to evaluate both those streets for potential road diets. Unlike Shoreline Drive, which is a very non-traditional road diet, Apple and Getty in particular, the 4-lane sections, are very traditional, well-proven road diets that have been done across the country for a number of years. We actually found a pretty good video to share. It's kind of corny, I will admit. It's from Iowa DOT, so it's literally corny as well. But I think it covers a lot of the big talking points that relate to these particular types of road diets. So I think it's like 6 minutes long, something like that. So I just ask Ann to share that, and then if you have any questions on those, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you.
I have one big scoop of the chocolate, please.
Hey, Avery, what's a 4-lane to 3-lane conversion?
Same.
Bart, what do you think about the project to change this road from 4 lanes to 3 lanes?
They say it's going to be safer. I guess we'll just have to wait and see about that.
Let's take a quick look at what a 4 to 3 lane conversion is. Here you see a typical 4-lane road. When we convert to a 3-lane, we keep the road the same size, but restripe it with 1 lane in each direction and a turn lane down the center. This often leaves room left over, which can be used for enhancements, such as parking or bike lanes. There are many benefits to this new configuration, which we'll discuss a bit later. But first, let's talk about safety. Improved safety for all users is the main reason cities across Iowa have chosen a 3-lane road. In this case, 3 is better than 4 because it results in fewer crashes and fewer injuries. This keeps traffic flowing, saving people time and money. In fact, converting a 4-lane road to a 3-lane road has been shown to reduce crashes by up to 47%.
Let's see. Groceries, pharmacy, what else? Whoa, what are you doing?
With 4-lane roads, drivers may stop or slow down at any time to make a turn from the left lane. These unexpected actions result in frequent rear-end crashes, side swipes, or quick lane changes.
Hey, are you okay?
Another common crash type on 4-lane roads is an angle crash. Due to line-of-sight issues on 4-lane roads, drivers trying to make that left-hand turn often cannot see vehicles in the outside lane because they are hidden by vehicles in the inside lane. By design, a 3-lane road makes these previously invisible cars visible, helping drivers navigate their turns more safely. Moving all left turns to the center lane reduces rear-end and sideswipe crashes too. Fewer crashes also means that law enforcement will spend less of their time responding to crashes, allowing them to focus on other priorities.
The main reason we went to a 3-lane versus a 4-lane is for safety. We were covering a lot of accidents on the 4-lane, and by going to a 3-lane, it has decreased our accidents significantly. Also, it's a safety factor for our pedestrians.
It's true. Research has shown that 3-lane roads are safer for pedestrians than 4-lane roads. There are fewer lanes to cross, so pedestrians are exposed to traffic for a shorter time. And since there is only 1 lane of traffic in each direction, it's easier for pedestrians to judge how traffic is moving. Converting to a 3-lane road can improve safety for all users. But how well does it work for large vehicles, like farm equipment and semi-trucks? And how does it affect traffic flow?
During harvest time, we see quite a bit of equipment coming through here, like planters, combines, things like that. The traffic still flows great with it.
Since the width of the pavement hasn't changed, the impacts on large farm equipment and the vehicles around them are minimal.
As you can see, our equipment is big and getting larger, and we appreciate it when people get out of the way. We're harvesting corn right now, and we're having a pretty good year.
A 3-lane road also works well for semi-trucks. The center turn lane provides them with the room, if needed, to make turns onto or off of the road.
No issues at all with me with the semi-truck, just with the 2-lane with the lane in the center.
A 3-lane road also works well for emergency responders because drivers can move over quickly and easily.
Compared to either a 2-lane road or a 4-lane road, the 3-lane has a lot better response time because, we can get across there a lot quicker.
On a 4-lane road, emergency vehicles can sometimes face bottlenecks when drivers in the left lane try to move over but can't. This problem goes away on a 3-lane road.
The 3-lane highway here in Atlantic works really good for us because the center lane is usually open for us, so we see very little slow time going through town.
The flexibility of a 3-lane road improves emergency response, and for drivers, traffic flows more consistently at appropriate speeds, making their drive times more predictable.
To whom it may concern, I have lived in Cresco, Iowa all my life. I want to commend your changing the Highway number 9 from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. It has slowed traffic down, it keeps the trucks in line at a proper speed, reduces accidents. It was an excellent change in every detail.
Highway 9 stays very busy. We've seen our businesses grow. Come and check us out in Cresco. If you want to see it firsthand, love to have you visit. Just drive through the corridor. You'll see that access to our businesses is very easy and identifiable. The road hasn't changed, just the paint changed. And so we figured out that the traveling public understood pretty quickly on how to maneuver this new corridor. And we also figured out that getting access into our downtown was actually easier and safer.
For many Iowa cities, 3 is better than 4. Check it out. Find out if a 3-lane road is right for your city. Visit the following website for more information.
Thanks, Ann. The 2 things I forgot to mention before I started the video. MDOT has a project planned on Apple in 2026 that's going to be a major full reconstruction of Apple Avenue in the entire city limits, all the way from 31 into downtown. This study would really help advise that. If we want to have a say in what that road looks like, this study is what supports our say in that. Otherwise, MDOT will come at it and they'll kind of maintain the status quo in a lot of ways on some of these things. The Getty Street project has a potential to kind of include our neighboring communities of Muskegon Heights and Norton Shores. We've looked at it from a broader sense in possibly doing a multi-jurisdictional study on the corridor. We haven't got any firm agreement on that yet, but I think if we had numbers, that would probably help inform Muskegon Heights and Norton Shores if they wanted to participate in that as well. Like I mentioned, these are really much more traditional road diets. There won't be any pilot necessarily. You won't notice anything while this takes place. This would be 100% data collection, engineering, traffic modeling type work that would be really predictive and not necessarily something you would see in the public. So that was all.
Excellent. Thank you, Leo. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Or Commissioner Gorman?
Director Evans, so the MDOT reconstruction for 2020, do we know what that looks like right now, or just it's on the docket for something?
It has just been programmed.
Okay.
So they've set their money aside for
Okay.
fiscal year 2026. Given the processes they go through, they will be starting survey and design probably this fall and summer. So
Okay. Thank you.
Speaking of that project, do I recall that you had a hand in helping secure the state funding for reconstruction of Apple Avenue?
I tried to talk them into giving us the money and turning the road back to us and letting us rebuild it, but they didn't want anything to do with that. But yeah, we helped make sure that was a project that was important to them. I think they actually used some of their MDOT ARPA allocation to fund that project, and it may have been the only project in the entire Grand region that was funded with those dollars through the state. So
Excellent.
It's a big project. I don't remember the exact number. I felt like it was around 19 or 20 million dollars is what they have allocated for that project in 2026, which is, as you saw from our budget presentation, is 4 times what we receive in a single year for our street allocation. So
that's
they have some money behind it, and the more data we can have to inform and guide that project, the better we'll be in the back end, and the happier we'll be with it.
Excellent. Well, nice work on helping to bring those resources to our community. Thank you. Commissioner Ramsey.
Director Evans, can you explain what the traffic study will look like on Apple while this is happening, if there are lane changes or anything like that? Give our neighbors a very high-level understanding of what that will look like.
Yep. The study itself, you won't notice anything other than potentially some traffic counters, hoses, cameras, things like that, that count the number of cars at intersections. What we'll get out of it will be a traffic model that'll show what the level of service of a road is, which is, how well it operates, how long of a delay you might expect, and likely a cost associated with if you were to just do what Iowa did and just repaint a road, what would it cost to repaint that road? So you won't notice anything as a motorist or a citizen while this traffic study takes place.
Great, thank you. And then just 2 comments. I think that it's super important that in the video it really spoke to the increased access for our public safety and how it made it safer not only for our neighbors but for our public safety officers to navigate the road itself. And so I think that's an amazing thing. I'm excited to see the outcomes of this traffic study that will not be affecting anyone at all other than some people standing on the street and a hose going across the road, so don't email me. But thank everybody for being engaged.
Ask a question. So Leo, when they do this study, we'll probably have a comparison, right? Like we'll understand how it operates today, and then we'll understand if we did the change, how it would operate with the change.
Sure, right, and they would, you would have some projections of what the traffic today is, what the traffic patterns might look like in 20 years if there's growth or big changes in the community. So those will all be factored into that study as well. So it'll really be a short-term and a long-term guiding document for both of those corridors.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, Director Evans. We have a cost estimate of what this may cost.
We don't yet. I believe we proposed $50,000 in the budget for traffic studies this year in the Major Street Fund. If we post an RFP, it would come back to you with a price that would be approved at that time. So right now, I'm just looking for consent to move ahead with an RFP, bring you a proposal back from an engineering firm that would have that cost for the study associated. So.
Thank you.
So how soon would you be looking to issue the RFP for Apple or Getty?
Probably later this month, we would issue them. Leave them out for 3 to 4 weeks. Take them back, score proposals, probably sometime late July, early August. Bring them to your approval, provided that they're of the limit that they need to come here or you want to see them here.
Is there a likelihood of being able to have any overlap or concurrence of the traffic study for Apple Avenue and Getty Street with regard to potential road diets there with the Shoreline Drive road diet? Will we see any overlap in time periods or potentially?
It's potential that they could overlap. Yeah,
okay.
I would say so.
I personally would be very interested in seeing how they interact.
Sure.
You know, us doing, because we will be changing, whereas we won't be changing anything with Apple or Getty as part of the study. We will be changing Shoreline Drive, and so I'd be interested to know how that will impact traffic flows through Getty and Apple Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? No? All right. Thanks so much, Director Evans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we got beach parking neighboring community proposal from our manager.
Would you be able to bring that up on the screen from the packet?
I'll work on it.
Otherwise, I'll fire up my computer again.
Is it on tomorrow's agenda?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Those aren't the right dates. Oh. There you go.
Here go to packets. Nope.
No.
Packet.
Gotta go to packets.
You've only done this a million times before, right?
There we go.
Oops.
Time to consent, yeah.
Aye. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry.
No, you're good. But if I would have known you had to go through that much effort, I would have just fired my computer back up.
Would you mind, just because we got two commissioners missing, would you mind waiting a few
No,
minutes?
I don't mind waiting.
We're just going to take a brief wait for two of our commissioners to rejoin us.
Okay.
So they're not missing out on anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Is that everything? I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, just that one page.
Since we had a minute.
This one. Yeah.
This one? Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In the meantime, I was going to save this to the end, but in the meantime, just amazing work to our city clerk and everyone in the clerk's office and the entire Taste of Muskegon team.
It's a great team.
It was a phenomenal event Friday and Saturday, and thank you also for taking that extra time to accommodate and welcome our visiting dignitary, the Consulate General, the Japanese Consulate General out
so
of
nice
Detroit.
meeting them. They were so nice. Yes, yes. We for Taste of Muskegon, since we're waiting for a second, We broke all records, and we sold 289, over 289,000 tickets. Wow. Which, to put that in perspective, last year we sold about 170,000.
Wow.
So we sold more in one day than we did the whole event last year.
That is amazing.
So it was awesome to see. Yeah, it was a great time.
Y'all were busting your butts, that was for sure. And the mood was positive. Like, everyone was happy throughout the event, even the folks that had to wait in longer lines to get tickets. Like,
as we recycled tickets and counted them out
Yes.
one at a time too, and Commissioner Emery was one of them counting tickets, and so was Commissioner Gorman, and they're all like
People were chill.
Yeah, but
People were
really
very
nice about it.
pleasant
Just
and
excited to have an event.
Yes,
They were
that's
very nice.
that's what I marked it up to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was very here he is.
You're fine, Michael.
Was that the decaf or caffeinated? Oh, you emptied the caffeinated? Well, I was about to get a refill. No. All right. We were just waiting for return so that you're not missing out on anything as our manager reports out on this item. So, yes, let's proceed.
Okay. So we've had some proposals in past years for how we can offer some beach parking passes to our neighbors, especially our neighbors that are of lower income, so that we can have as many people enjoying the beach as we possibly can. I believe it was last year we had a proposal where, and we did send out a letter to all the neighboring communities saying that we would sell passes, I feel like it was increments of 100, to communities at $17.50 a piece instead of $20 if they would sell them at $15. So we would offer a discount, but they would offer a discount as well. So, and nobody took us up on that offer. We did end up providing, I don't know, I feel like 200 or 250 free passes to Muskegon Heights. And so Muskegon Heights has reached out to me and asked if we would be doing something similar this year. So I thought it would be best if we put together some sort of a proposal, and I'm looking for comments and modifications. So I will tell you that I did ask for a report from Muskegon Heights to see how it went with distributing those passes. I haven't heard back yet. But in the meantime, I'm proposing something to phase out the program, thinking that, it was a big change to people when we implemented the program, but now we're a couple of years in, and if we take a couple more years to phase it out, they, should have had plenty of time to kind of develop some sort of a plan for themselves. So what I'm proposing is that this year, we offer a number of passes based on the households that are making less than 50% AMI. And that we sell them at a 50% discount and require that we get a report on how the municipality handled that. And then the next season, the income threshold is the same, but we would not give as many passes out and the discount would be less. And then in the last, and then out into 24 and beyond, that we wouldn't offer any discounts. So this is just my proposal. I didn't really get direction from anybody on putting this together. It was just my idea of a way to do it. Happy to have input.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, you have questions or comments? Commissioner Emery.
Is your expectation that these communities, Muskegon Heights or Norton Shores, is going to assist with their residents or to purchase these discounted?
It would be up to them. We would sell them to the community at a discount, and then they could determine what they would sell them for, but they couldn't sell them for any more. Like, they can't make money on it.
Okay.
Okay. So essentially, the municipality that use this formula to then buy in bulk the number of passes, or up to that number of passes at the discount, and then would redistribute it to the qualifying residents in their own municipality.
Right.
And then track that and report back to us.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Emery.
Yeah,
follow-up.
would they determine the qualifications, or are they going to be required to go by our qualifications?
Well, I'm not. I don't believe that I put in here that we would require them to only distribute the passes to people making 50% or less. I'm just saying we're going to base the number of passes that we're going to sell at a discount on that criterion. You know, all I'm asking is that they tell us how they distributed them to low income residents, and I'm not defining that. I'm just so they have some discretion.
Did I see your hand up
Oh,
earlier,
yes.
Commissioner?
Absolutely, you did.
Ramsey.
Manager Maxell, thank you for taking the initiative and looking at this. It's something that we as a bench have talked about many times, being more neighborly to our friends in Muskegon Heights and Norton Shores. I appreciate the wind down. I don't think that I could vote on a wind down or an ordinance with a wind down in it until we see what's coming in specifically from the parking, because that will let us know how that's going to impact those dollars. And so maybe it is a longer term that we look at, or maybe it's shorter. I don't know, right? I do think that it's an awesome opportunity for our neighbors in Muskegon Heights to be able to purchase our beach passes at a discount. I do think that we should be stronger about how they are allowed to distribute and to who. And if that's not something that Muskegon Heights or Norton Shores wants to take on, then I would think that could be something that we could do out of our own offices. If you, without further marginalizing or criminalizing or penalizing or stigmatizing anyone, you know, if they can show that they are a household with less than 50%, with 50% or less AMI, they should be able to purchase one of those passes from us. I don't see the need for the Heights at all, but I would like to, you know, I mean, so maybe I just put my foot in my mouth because we're only doing one per 50 households. So I don't know, but I think that there should be an agreement that talks about how they will be distributed and who they go to. Because I could give Teresa 50 things because, you know, she reports that she has 50 households. So I give her 50. But if I don't then monitor who she gives them to, she can give them to all her buddies over there in Bluffton that don't need them, right? Like just as an example. And so I think that for us to be the best stewards of that and for our intentions to be met, that we would need to have a stronger hand in how they're distributed. But otherwise, this looks great. Other than completely saying no to it. It's amazing.
Right.
You're the king of double
Yeah,
speak. No.
I believe some part of the conversation last year was I thought that our CNS director was working with her counterpart in Muskegon Heights because she would already have some information on households that met that criteria. And I think that once the passes got over to to Muskegon Heights, then it changed how they were being distributed. At least that's what I have been told, but I have not asked that question of anybody. So that's partly why I asked for a report, just to understand, okay, well, this was our intention. From what I understand, the commission's intention in providing these free passes, and so help us understand how they got distributed before we agree to give more.
Yeah, because I don't want to see Gary Nealon rolling up to Pure Marquette Beach with a free pass. I'm not going to have it.
Yeah.
Just playing Gary. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that our intention is very specific around this program, and it needs to be completed that way. Otherwise, it's for naught.
Got you.
Excuse me. So how many passes per household we're talking?
We're not saying passes per household. What I've put in here is that we would give one pass per 50 households that meet that criteria. So we're not saying that every household that meets that criteria gets one.
So at a discount.
It's just a way to determine the number that we would send that way, and then they would have to distribute them. That's my proposal, but Commissioner Ramsey is suggesting a different way.
And just to speak about the possibility of us distributing them ourselves, I would not be keen on doing that. That's going to be quite administratively taxing.
She's fine.
We're already talking about enough on our staff's plate and not having capacity, so I would not personally be of the mind of we are going to administer a program whereby we are selling passes at a discount to residents and our neighboring CDBG entitled communities based upon their income levels.
Yeah, that's the part that I have an issue with. Is that I can't ask someone to come in here and verify their income. That's stigma all around. But I also know that we need to be intentional about how rock in a hard place, eh?
What we could do, and this is deviating from what you proposed, but just bouncing ideas. For those that are those residents in our neighboring communities who are in neighboring CDBG entitled, the specific CDBG entitled communities, as they are applying for those CDBG resources already, like we have priority home repair or other assistance. So like as they're applying for those services and they already have to document their income for those services, that they then would be able to access those passes, beach passes. That could be another way of going about it.
Have we talked to them? Like anybody on Heights Council, their input on that? Like have they heard from their residents? Like is there opportunity? Like I'm just thinking like before we say this is how we're gonna do it, should we ask how would you prefer it done,
Which I think would have been reflected in the report pack that we requested. Like how did you distribute?
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that
would have given insights. I mean, part of me is like, we haven't even heard how they're distributed previously.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Why are we revisiting that? Although I think our intention as a commission is to be a compassionate city to our neighbors. And that, I appreciate the manager's work on this proposal in that regard. Commissioner Ramsey, did you have something?
I think that you're onto something, Mr. Mayor. I think that if we are already providing services through an application, then it would be one of those fringe, right? That you can also access. It's like how sometimes for enhanced or fringe programs, if you already qualify for a SNAP or a food benefit card, you automatically qualify for other programs as well. And so if we look at it that way, we're not asking anything above and beyond. We're just saying if you qualify for one of our CBD acronym here, CBD, dear Lord, CDBG programs, and you're applying for it, with that application, you also have an opportunity to purchase a discounted, and then it comes through us. We know that it's our intent is being met, and we're still being very neighborly, and it doesn't create any extra work for the Heights because they don't have to do reports and things like that. They don't have to distribute, and we meet our intention with the. I hate to say it out loud, but I sort of love that, Mr. Mayor. I would support that.
Okay, I could see that if we were to administrate that, it's still simplifying it considerably.
Yeah, well, because
if we
then
just say,
that office could take care of it.
If you qualify for EBT, then you could come in and get a beach pass at a discounted rate.
Well, and so I said EBT as an example, but you said but like because they're qualifying already for
make it more accessible, whereas
it would make it more accessible,
rather limiting.
So maybe one is not enough, maybe the other is too much, the deluge with the paper cup. But there's an opportunity to explore there. But I think if they're already coming to our offices to apply for something, tack it on as a fringe of that and say, because you qualify for this, you get an opportunity if you'd like to. No big deal. And then we have it go through CNS, which I'm sure they don't have enough to do already. So we'll just have Mike Franzik do it through CNS. That's fine. And but there is opportunity there. So it keeps our intentions pure, the facilitation clean, and doesn't require any additional work from our sister city in their offices.
So with this program, they would still be coming here to get them, not? Okay.
I mean, if this is where they're applying for the C.
No, they would be applying, the CDBG services would be applied within their own community, although we used to administer, we provided some administrative oversight, but we weren't administering the actual dollars in Northern Shores and Muskegon Heights.
Right.
So that would be on those municipalities to receive those applications and respond to them. But no, we do not administer the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant dollars for our neighboring municipalities.
Yep, I still think there's opportunity there, even though I didn't understand it completely in the first place. But I would still support that.
Yeah, mine was more of just that's how they could administer them or distribute them.
Keeps
It's
it clean, neat, and
as
tidy.
people are applying for those services that are CDBG funded, they can say, "Hey, here's a beach pass. If you'd like it,
If
you
you'd
can
like
get it." Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. That was just a suggestion. I don't know. I'm not particularly married to any specific. I like the intent, but
Yeah, me too.
It's the how do we implement that is
The details.
a little bit more complex, I suppose. Did I see you wanted to add something or ask something, Commissioner
Said the
St. Clair?
devil's in the details.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I guess I'd like to point out that, the way that I have it in the proposal, it may only be about 80 passes with how I've got it with one pass per 50 households that meet that criteria. So, if we think it needs to be more than 80 passes, then that criteria needs to change as well. I started out with something much more liberal and was told that I think I was using 80% AMI, and I was told that pretty much the whole city would qualify. So I figured I had to reduce it somehow, and then 50% AMI is another data point that is tracked.
Yep.
And so that's where I went, but maybe it's 1 in 25 instead of 1 in 50 or something if we think we want to give more passes. But anyway, something to point out.
Yeah, I think 1 in 50 may be too limiting, whereas making a larger number of them available. It's kind of difficult to assess this without having that report out from last year, because I'm curious, were those 250 passes that we gave previously, were they, requested immediately and distributed immediately, and so there's great demand for them, in which case do we want to try to have a program that could accommodate that number, or they linger and in a safe or something and we're not distributed. But I guess I'd be more inclined to not be so limiting as 1 per 50 households, because that would generate wouldn't be a whole lot.
Right.
To be potentially distributed to the
Well,
least among us and our neighbors.
The Heights is like 4% of the county population, right? The city of Muskegon
There's
Heights.
about 10,000 people in Heights, maybe 3,000 households.
So it's not very
4,000
many.
households.
Yeah. Right. And that was a number out of the air,
Yeah.
something.
So yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of raising the AMI, but I would be in favor of increasing the number of passes given. But again, to side with the mayor, darn it, I would also like to see the report from last year. I think that's super valid. Yeah, just even if it's a narrative about how.
Should I pull this from the agenda tomorrow until I can get that report?
I would support that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And we would
I'll
encourage
reach
our
out.
friends at the city of Muskegon Heights to go ahead and expedite that so that we can get it taken care of before we're too deep into the season, eh?
Yeah.
Just one other thing. I kind of like the pass because I was thinking along the line as Commissioner Ramsey, if it was somehow the city here could issue out those passes, and I think you kind of touched on it too, Mayor, providing the proof that you qualify within that, income range. If they really want the passes, and we make it known that, hey, they can pick those passes up here at the city. And another thing, we didn't want to put a lot of work on our clerk over here also, so, but I just think that would probably be a good way to issue them out, and we know that as a city that we are issuing out those passes, and they're not just, as you mentioned, sitting up somewhere or, not being utilized. So, just a thought. Yeah,
Can I have some clarification?
Yes, Commissioner St. Clair.
Your proposal was that the partner city would buy those from us at a discount. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if we are the ones issuing them, there would be no sale accept directly to the individual.
Yeah, but I guess I would suggest that we still use the discount.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make it achievable.
Yep.
Quick clarification for me too that I'm going to pretend that Commissioner St. Clair's asking. Is it the police office over here that gives out the after? So it's not actually the clerk's office, right? You guys do the original, like, cattle call of get your passes. Like, coming in.
Yeah, we just sent out messages. But
Right.
No, the police department.
But the
takes care of it.
police
Yeah.
department
And Treasury.
would actually be the ones doing the work when people
Treasury
showed
does
up.
too. Yeah.
Oh, Treasury. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I was trying to pin it on. Okay.
So those are two pretty different proposals, though. One would be we sell passes at a discount to our neighboring communities that qualify under these particular criteria, asking them, please also sell these at a discount to these specific individuals. The other would be we don't sell them to anybody except the direct individual at a $5 discount instead of a $3 discount on our part. Am I summing it up correctly?
Mm-hmm.
I can go with either one.
Yeah.
Except for $1 $10 discount.
Right. Yeah.
But again, no
Just to
condemnation or
clarify, yes.
condoning
Oh.
until we
Yeah.
are able to see a
50%
report.
off the $20 pass.
Okay.
yeah.
I misunderstood that. I thought it was $15.
Oh, God. Oh, no, that was the old program.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
So,
I
you
did
know,
not
it'd be
have it clear.
50%
Sorry.
off the annual fee.
Okay.
Or the fee of
Yeah.
the annual pass.
Mhm.
Yes. I personally would not want us to administer the program and sell them to individuals. I just think that might be, unless we were comfortable with doing something like, if you got an EBT, you can buy this discounted. That makes it super simple.
Yeah, the only issue
But
then is tracking.
anything beyond that, I think is going to be overly complicated and time consuming for our staff, and I'm not keen on
So,
such.
going down that, if we do that, then it doesn't have to have anything to do with the CDBG entitlement communities.
With the exception of, I was just thinking in my head what
Like,
I just
how
said,
do we
with the exception
verify
of,
that?
of you are coming from a CDBG entitled community. You're coming from the Heights or Northern Shores. Those are the only other two CDBG entitled
Right.
communities in the county. But
Yeah, I was just gonna say we could check their ID to see if they lived in Muskegon Heights or Northern Shores.
I'm just wondering if we are the ones who are administering it, facilitating it, whatever. Is there a specific reason why it would have to be tied to those, or why we could not open it up to, say, Muskegon Township or Dalton Township or anybody who falls under that range? Because the way I see it is that's 100% more access, and it's probably not going to cost us much because not that many people are going to take advantage. But to quote Commissioner Ramsey, it is a very neighborly thing to do. And there is going to be people who are upset that this goes to two specific communities. And if that is our criteria, if we're setting that criteria, and if we want to change the whole program that we're administering it, and if you show I have an EBT card, does it matter where they live if they're in the county?
Okay, so
that's a great question and good point. And yeah, it could be opened. I mean, if we want to, as the commission, we can say we're going to open this to the county.
At the end of the
for
day,
any
it's all
county
revenue.
resident who has an EBT, that will give a 50% discount on the passes. So that that makes it even more accessible to all of our neighbors throughout the county. Commissioner Ramsey?
I got you. This is the last thing I'll say. So instead of further, marginalizing and criminalizing Black people who may be suffering from poverty, like we were talking about doing not seconds ago, what if we did it countywide, and that if you live in Muskegon County and you are not a member of the city of Muskegon, but instead of it being 20, it's 15, period, for any county resident. I don't care how you qualify, because that's neighborly. I am just all levels, right? Let's talk about every single bit of it.
No.
I mean, I realize that affects our coffers. But at the same time, how much money are we collecting from people who are coming from
I would
Dalton
say
Township?
a lion's share of our parking revenues probably come from Muskegon County residents. And so if we were to give a significant discount to all residents, regardless of their income, including, I'm not going to say the name that you referenced earlier, but including people with the means to afford $20 pass, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. In my
support. So
assessment.
then,
But do you want to add anything?
I was just going to ask a question. So, if the idea is to open this up to anybody in the county who has an EBT card, I can imagine that there may be City of Muskegon residents who only got their 1 or 2 passes, depending on how quickly they got their request in, that might want more. If they have an EBT card, should we sell them a discount too?
So my thought, if we are going the EBT route and opening the entire county, that it would be 1 per household, the same that we are limiting our current residents after April 30th.
Okay.
Maybe next year we can reevaluate if we get that, strong enough cellular service at the beach to accommodate our preferred kiosk system, and that's based on license plates, and then we can open up more passes to our residents, because I personally prefer to say, hey, residents, you got 3 cars, you get 3 passes. You got 1 car, you get 1 pass. You got 4 cars, but that's not feasible on the current parking pass system. But it may be possible and feasible with the license plate reader and going with that cellular service connected kiosk.
Yeah, and that would be a huge entertainment. So now here's me saying, no, I don't want to do any of it.
Turns out.
It's also, well, I mean, you've got to play both sides of the card, right? So now, for our police officers who are selling the team over here who's selling, how are they tracking? How much time is this going to take? Our county is 75,000 people. 175,000 people. That's what I said. So all of those things need to be considered, because that's going to be a lot of work for you, Mr. Rush, to sit at that office all day and just give out those things, right? But Mike could help. But I think that there's a ton of opportunity there for you to look at, Manager Mike Sell, and come up with a couple of different scenarios to make us all happy at the same time. Okay? Great.
Yeah, it'll be really tough to limit them to 1 per household, because
how do you track
that's
that
just going to be a lot of tracking. I mean, I think that they're doing a fair amount of tracking already. So I guess if they wrote down an address and somebody came in later and gave the same address, they would get one. But anyway, yeah, you're right. There's a cost to doing this for sure.
Yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah. It's valid, but there has to be an opportunity for us to be more neighborly. So if you could just come up with that, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for at least giving us something to go off. But.
Yeah, well, it's aspirational.
Oh.
For next year, that we start something very simple this year.
Start it with just the Heights and Northern Shores.
Yeah. And I would like to see that report. And I'm not about the wind down, but I am about everything else you had in there for right now until we see a report and look at revenue from our parks. Full circle.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, the idea to sell the passes to the community and let them distribute them means that they have to handle the administration. So they do have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
As long as they're actually following the rules that we're asking.
Right.
So
I would just like to hear about how they did that, and then we're good to go.
Okay.
Monumental waste of time. My apologies.
No, and this is a work session. This is what we're
right,
doing.
which is
we're
what this is for, so that tomorrow night we're not here for 16 hours again, eh?
We're working through the issues.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or input, or is
Just a quick question. So this will be pulled off the agenda tomorrow, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will you handle that, Ann? Thank you.
are you looking for any additional input from the commission on this, or you think you got an idea of how to proceed? I know there's a lot thrown at you tonight.
Sorry. Well, the good news is I can always go watch this again and remind myself. But I think I'm good for now, especially since we, it sounds like everybody agrees that we should have a report first. So I'll get that, and then I can make some adjustments to my original proposal, and we'll go from there.
All right. Excellent. Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
So now is time for public comment. Oh, City Clerk.
I've been texting back and forth with Director Grant, and we recognize that we published a public hearing for tomorrow for our budget, and it's being suggested if we just open and close, like give the public an opportunity to give public input, and then close it. You can still adopt it at the next one, but we won't have to publish it again. And anybody who is planning on being here, it would just save you some funds and some.
Okay, so we'll proceed with the public hearing tomorrow, whether or not we actually adopt
Correct.
the budget.
If you're okay with me leaving that on.
Yeah, let's proceed with the public hearing.
Okay.
As scheduled.
Thank you.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
All right, so it is public comment. I don't see any
Public.
any public members with us still, so then we shall adjourn. But don't go anywhere because we have a community relations committee meeting right after this.
Right now.
Yes. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Germer, supported by Commissioner St. Clair to adjourn. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. We are adjourned.